call the April 7th Select Board meeting to order. We are using Zoom webinar for our meetings, which allows for the public to participate in the meetings as an attendee. Attendees must register to participate. The registration link is unique to the meeting. The registration link can be found in the description of the Nantucket Government TV YouTube live feed for the meeting. People registering to be an attendee must use their names, otherwise they will not be allowed to participate in the discussion. Attendees will join in listening mode. They can click their raise the hand button if they wish to speak. The chair will call on those who have raised their hands in the order in which they were raised at the appropriate time in the meeting. As a preliminary matter, I'm Dawn Holgate, Chair of the Nantucket Select Board. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. I'll start with the Select Board members in the order in which I see you. Melissa Murphy.
Here, Dawn.
Jason Bridges.
Here.
Matt Fee.
Here.
Thank you very much. Christy Parentella is not with us this evening. Let me go through town staff members in the order in which I see you. David Gray.
Here, good evening.
Good evening. Libby Gibson.
Present.
Kamal McCarthy.
Hello.
Amy Baxter.
Here.
Roberto Santamaria.
Here.
Erica Mooney.
Present.
Stephen Murphy.
Good evening.
Janet Schulte.
Good evening.
Brian Turbot.
Present.
Thank you very much. We also have with us this evening John Giorgio from Town Council's office.
Present.
Steve Holgate for the Hunting Association.
Present.
Gary Shaw.
Present.
And Mike Duffy. Oh, I see that the mic went off, but Mike, can you hear me? This open meeting of the Select Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings at a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely, so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation. However, we do ensure public participation as I outlined at the beginning. Please note that the meeting is being recorded and that everyone is participating by video conference. Accordingly, folks will be able to see you, and take care not to share the screen of your computer, as anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials will be found on the town's website unless otherwise noted. Please follow along unless we note otherwise that something will be put up on the screen. I will go through and introduce the speakers on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, people may raise their hands for questions or comments. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly to ensure accurate minutes. If you wish to engage in conversations, please do so through the chair. And finally, every vote will be taken by roll call this evening. In regard to the agenda, I believe we have one additional announcement about hazardous waste dates. And we do have Gary Shaw from the hospital has joined us as a speaker under the COVID-19 weekly update. And I think that those are all of the changes for this evening. So we'll go to announcements. We've already covered that it's being audio and video recorded. And Libby, would you like to introduce the other speakers?
Yes, sure. Thank you. So we have our DEI director, Kamal McCarthy, here tonight. He has 3 updates and announcements to make. Kamal?
Thanks, Libby. So a member of the Select Board asked me to read the solidarity statement for the Asian American Pacific Islanders. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. On behalf of the town of Nantucket, We would like to express solidarity with all individuals that identify as Asian American Pacific Islanders on Nantucket and across the United States. We are saddened and heartbroken by the recent rise in attacks against the AAPI community. The acts of violence that took place on Tuesday, March 16, 2021 in Atlanta, Georgia are tragic. Violence and hatred is never the answer. It tears families, communities, and the country apart. As Director of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office, I would like to reiterate the Select Board pledge to the Nantucket community issued on June 24, 2020, which states that we are committed to do the work to make Nantucket a more just and equitable community for all of its constituents. You're welcome to visit the DEI webpage for the full statement and additional information. The DEI office welcomes any ideas or initiatives to assist the AAPI community. With support from town leadership and our community, I am committed to ensuring that Nantucket is equitable, and inclusive for all. I am also going to just quickly share the new mission statement for the DEI office, as well as just share the webpage real quick. So before I share the mission statement, I just want to thank Erica, Chief Pittman, Janet, Kay Bradford, Kadeem, Town Manager Gibson, Florencia, and everyone else who contributed to the statement, which reads as it's on your screen. The mission of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office is to be the primary resource for the town of Nantucket's diverse communities and organizations in order to create and sustain an equitable and inclusive community for all residents and employees, so that all residents and employees can feel safe and loved. And lastly, just to share really quickly, you can see that the webpage, again, which is in front of you, has a diverse Nantucket section. Those links will be changed over time, so you can imagine a human services organizations being listed, as well as museums that share Mariah Mitchell Association or the Museum of African American History and the important documents section. Thank you everyone for your time.
Fantastic, Kamal. Thank you so much. And might I just add for people that Kamal is very busy. He's meeting with lots of different groups and people, and he is getting at things. So Kamal, thank you so much. The next announcement is the Surfside Road Sewer Improvement Project, which has had a slight delay. Sewer Director is going to announce it and explain, please. David?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. Yeah, the Surfside Road Sewer Improvement Project is set to begin on Sunday at 4 p.m. until 2 a.m. That's going to be our schedule ongoing night work. And that came out of meetings that we had with the school and everything to try to prevent any major traffic issues during the day. There will be one day a week where we will be doing some pavement, trench paving and stuff from 9 a.m. to 2 a.m. on Fridays, but there will be no full road closures on Fridays. There may be a small couple minutes while a truck gets into place or whatever like that, but other than that, all the work is going to be at night. One of the biggest things that was driving some of the complete blockages was the fact that some of these excavations are anywhere up to 18 feet. So it takes special care and equipment to work in that depth. So that was one of the driving factors to trying to have the total road closures. RBO is on the island. They've been in full force here at the plant for this whole week, getting supplies and manholes and pipes and getting stock over to the site. So Sunday night, we will get started and hopefully it will go smoothly.
Thanks, David. The household hazardous waste announcement is that we do have a household hazardous waste collection day this Saturday, April 10th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. It is for households and commercial, quote, very small quantity generators, and that's a specific category. So if you have your household hazardous waste, please bring it out this Saturday to the landfill. That is it for announcements, I believe.
Thank you very much. COVID-19 weekly update is the next item on our agenda. Are there any opening board comments or public comments? I'm seeing none. Oh, excuse me. Jeannie Randolph on COVID-19.
Sorry, I think no, I don't have anything to say about COVID. I have public comments. That would be later this is my first time doing it. Is this later in the session?
Yes, and public comments are for under this one, we allow public comments throughout the COVID-19 discussion in case you have questions. And then we have public comment after this on our agenda, but it is limited to items that are otherwise not on our agenda for discussion. So if it is related to anything that is on our agenda, we'll take public comment during those agenda items. Is that helpful?
I think so.
Okay, great, thank you. Next, I will turn the discussion over to our Public Health Director, Roberto Santamaria.
Good evening, or afternoon now with daylight savings time. So let me go ahead and share my screen. I don't see the button anymore. There it is. And then, oh, nope, sorry, wrong button. I'm sorry, just a moment. Technical difficulties. There we go, 2 screens, so my apologies. Okay, so today's COVID vaccine is up. So we've had close to 30,000 tests. So we'll probably cross the 30,000 test threshold tomorrow with 1,400 positives. And the last few weeks have really been a tough surge. And from what we're seeing with the sewer, it's only going to continue and possibly still increase. So what I'm going to try to start showing here is in this last month here, you'll see that we've actually reached a pretty steep curve. I know the question's usually going about what's the R number. In this case, the R number is getting dangerously close to 2. I would venture to say that it's around 1.7 or so. So we're really looking at this. We have the sewer biobot report is actually showing here. This report came in this morning. And it's showing that we're now looking at about 20 cases per day over the course of the next 7 days. And we are now at the same spike threshold as we were in the November surge that we were seeing. Maybe not as high as where we were after Thanksgiving, but we're on our way. And this is still using the same population estimates as we were just a few weeks ago. So we're increasing COVID concentration within a static population. The only thing that we can attribute this to would be the variants. We have to assume that the variants are here. We already saw that in last week's sewer metrics, the variant B117 is here, which if we had to guess, which were, as awful as it sounds, which is the best variant to get, B117 is that one, because it is still, the vaccine is still viable against it. The P1 variant, which is probably the most virulent variant that we're seeing, is already on the Cape, and it's starting to propagate on the Cape. We had a meeting with the state yesterday. They're going to start increasing the amount of samples taken from Nantucket to test for the P1 variant. So we'll know within the next few weeks whether or not that P1 variant is here. We don't know yet, though, but we have to assume it is here. Where are we with the vaccine plan? We are in the last stage of phase 2. We are moving into phase 3 on April 19th. This section of phase 2 opened up this last Monday, 2 days ago. So on Saturdays at 10 a.m., please sign up. That's when all the new appointments open up, and the website is right here, covidvaccine.massgeneralbrigham.org. And with that, I will go into our vaccine tracker, which as of Monday, we have issued over 8,000 doses, which is really good. We're doing very well. And we are at at pace, if not faster, than most of the rest of the state. At the Boston Globe, I think it was 2 weeks ago, they reported that Barnstable County, Dukes County, and Nantucket County are the 3 highest vaccine rates in the state. So we're doing very well. And then with that, I will throw it over to Gary. Sorry for the 2-screen mix-up thing. And then Gary, take it away.
Thanks, Roberto. Well, I think what we see very plainly is that the challenge is still here, that we've got an escalating number of cases. And what we're seeing is a group of people, when they do come to the emergency room, they're sicker and they're younger. And I think proof to point is that I saw that it was reported in the Inky today that we have had another community death from COVID related sequela. And what we would say is that's so unfortunate and so preventable. And we would encourage anybody that is not feeling good, whether they have COVID or not, to come into the hospital and get care or ask for help and get an ambulance to bring you in. So please be careful. This virus is circulating, and as Roberto said, we just have to assume that the variants are here. And so we're at a precipice of how fast we can get vaccines out. And if you think of an analogy, I like to use analogies as a wave is coming at us. If that wave is 8 feet high, we're about 2 foot up on that wave of getting vaccines into the number of residents or people that are on the island. So we run the risk of being run over by that wave if we can't get vaccines out there, or if we can't slow down the transmission of this virus. I'm always asked, so where are you finding it? And Roberto's asked repeatedly. It doesn't matter right now to point out any particular area. What we know is that it's here, and we're seeing it being transmitted when people come to the island or leave the island, come back, and then get into dense housing situations or get into employee housing where people are in close quarters. And the recommendations that I've given in a recent radio announcement and in print is that even though the governor has relaxed the requirement for testing when coming back, it's still good practice for a business to not put people into dense housing units until you've had a number of days of quarantine, and then come over and PCR test at the Stop the Spread site to see whether you've got a virus or not, and then go into the workplace environment. I think a lot of the good work that we can do as employers on the island needs to start there. I think that as we get housing starting to ramp up with what we know is going to be a crush of people coming, I do think that we should be asking the public in this pandemic to do some quarantining in the places that they're staying, or stay with their guests that they've come over with. And if they have symptoms, come and get tested and let us know that way where we find this particular illness. So it is trying to find it, it is making access available for vaccines. It is getting every vaccine we can get from the state in arms as fast as possible. What I'm really proud of is the Cottage Hospital team and the community working together in a collaborative environment. And right now today we're at 400 vaccines, and we will probably continue that or escalate it moving into the future. So that's a boatload of vaccines. But if the number that we had of people on the island is 15,000, let's just say full-time residents, if we were vaccinating people that were here 3 months ago at that time, if we want to get all 15,000 vaccinated with either the current Moderna or Pfizer, that's 30,000 vaccines that have to be given. And right now we've given right at 8,000. So you can see, just doing the math, we're far from being near a herd immunity. And we do have a population of younger people that are impacted by this. There's one miracle in all of this timing, and that's that we were able to get vaccines into those people that are highest at risk, the nursing homes, individuals in first response, and we are not seeing cases in those areas. These cases are coming from young, typically healthy people. So the risk is real. Where we need to be focusing as a community to help slow it down and find it are things that I think we could talk through with Roberto and have measures that help the community move into a safe summer. Outdoor dining, I know there's a discussion coming up for that, keeping people separated, having people understand if they've been vaccinated and they're together with vaccinated people. Those are measures that we should be putting in print and talking to the community, having that at the High Line and the steamship as they get off. So, we've been leading into this so long, we forget that those are still just very simple measures that can work. But we're here at the hospital to lend a hand. We know that we were in a downswing of COVID just a month ago, and in an effort to make sure that we could expand at the VFW the number of hours that we were working, we moved the Stop the Spread into COVID over to the hospital. I know there's been a question asked about how much testing is available. But I can tell you, even in this COVID increase right now, we're not exceeding the Stop the Spread numbers that the state has given us on any major day. And we're not exceeding the capability and the hours on almost all days of testing that's symptomatic. What is occurring is if people have missed the hours for Stop the Spread, they're going into the symptomatic testing and being tested because they're telling staff that I have a particular symptom. By doing that, you flag yourself against getting a vaccine until you've shown that you are not positive and have not been sick for 14 days. So it creates a situation where we're having to have people call us to say, I don't understand why I'm being blocked for my second vaccine. Well, it's because you made a choice to go to a spot and gave indication that you met the criteria that are published on the state's website for symptomatic testing. So I would ask the public to be clear and go to the website from the state or Roberto's website, which has those criteria up there, to know which site is appropriate for why you're coming, whether you're an employer or whether you have symptoms. And if you are sick, please come in and let us test you. The emergency room is open. If people are sick and want to be taken care of, they will be brought into the emergency room. And if COVID testing is necessary, we'll do that there. But that is an emergency room visit. That's different than a COVID swab. So there is a difference there. Quantity has not been a problem. Convenience might have been as we started to get a few cars coming through with this initial spread. But I'm not seeing that we're finding many or any real complaints on either angle at this point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gary and Roberto. Are there questions from any board members or Matt?
Yeah, just a couple things. I've been reading the numbers on the Globe, like Roberto said too, and I think it's interesting. They show us as, sort of 66% have their first vaccination or something. I think my guess, and Roberto can correct me if I'm wrong, I think they're assuming that we have a 10,000 population, not 25 or 30. And I don't think they're backing out the vaccine tourists who have been coming and getting it and leaving, who are not in our 10,000. So I think what Gary explained, is closer to it, that at 400 a day, we have a ways to go. Am I correct on those assumptions?
Absolutely. The state's still using the census number.
Yeah. And I think so. The other thing, just as a comment, is if the new variants are 70% more virulent, 70% more transmissible, then I look at it as a math equation. We have to be 70% more, more careful. We have to be 70%, we have to be more careful than we were last year. And I think unfortunately what's happening is people are thinking we're near the end, and that this is not that we can relax a little bit because the state and other states are relaxing. And I think, that worries me going into the busy season. So, I think the message really that we need to be making is, we need to stay on this and hope that the warm weather puts us back where we belong, or we're not where we belong, puts us back close to where we were last year, to start the season. So that, that's my sort of thing. Yeah, I'm just a little bit, a little worried about it, as you guys seem to be. Am I wrong again about those numbers?
Not wrong at all. Absolutely. Going into the summer with an endemic spread is the worst case scenario that we can have. And just like you said, people think it's over. People think that just because the vaccine is here means that it's over. they kind of forget that there's a logistics portion of it, of actually getting the vaccine into people. And then also, as I hate to say it, but the politics got too deep into it too. So we're now getting people who are denying whether to get the vaccine on a national scale. We're a international destination, that affects us too for the people who are coming to visit. Just about 2 weeks ago, or not even 2 weeks ago, I received the email where somebody posted some on Twitter about the Rand Paul Dr. Fauci fight, where they were calling Dr. Fauci a loser, because they think this is all a hoax. And that's the type of stuff we're trying to beat. This is not a hoax. And please take the vaccine whenever you can and wherever you can get it.
Well, to add to that, we are in a dangerous time. Have no doubt about it. And we need to be really careful. And I think we need to review the measures that we've taken in the past and have a clear understanding on what would be appropriate to help our employers, to help our community members, to help your hospital keep this at a level that is manageable as we continue the vaccine. So we're at a precipice, and it's a really dangerous one with these variants that are here. I can't emphasize that enough.
Melissa, then Jason.
Thanks so much. I just have a few questions, and through you, Don, to either Gary or Roberta, whoever wants to take them. Is there a concern that as our population increases, I know I've asked this question before, but I keep hearing this from constituents, so I think it's important to address. Is there concern that we'll have enough vaccine to be put in arms, even at the 400 a day? If the state's using the 10,000 census number, but we've got population on the increase, can you remind us how we're getting enough vaccine here from the state?
So, Gary, do you want to take it, or do you want?
Well, I think it's a blend to answer, Roberto. You'll have to answer this, but and Roberto sits on our vaccine clinic meetings that we have almost every day. So we request an allotment, and we've been requesting an allotment typically that's way beyond what we've been getting, but we've been getting good numbers, and they steadily increase. There will be more and more vaccine coming. The question is, we don't know yet how the state will view us going from if they're calling it a 10,000 person island to a 50,000 person island, and that's the worry. Will the state come to a point where it says, well, you're showing you're 80% vaccinated, and we have 40,000 people over here that are asking for vaccines. So they need to be coming based on what the town is requesting, not what the census shows, and what the demand is at our vaccine sites. So I'm only worried that requires a logistics discussion for every town with Secretary Sutters and her team. And I know we'll be well represented with Roberto, facing that, or if Dr. Ann Klebansky, the head of the Mass MGB system, needs to address it for us, we'll weigh into it that way. About 2 weeks ago, Roberto and I were talking about, what is the number we're trying to achieve, and we were talking about that for vaccination status. We were talking about that because it would drive how long we would want to contract at the VFW or have another site available, and Roberto he will tell you what he feels herd immunity is. I will tell you that herd immunity was something that would have been an achievable number when we were in January, February, and it was a static population pretty much on the island. Every day now that number is going up. So that means if they haven't gotten vaccinated or aren't fully vaccinated and they're coming to the island, a 40,000 person, 50,000 person herd immunity is a much different goal if it's 60 or 70% than if you're at 10 to 15,000. So I anticipate that this vaccine clinic will go all summer at some level, at some large level, as long as there's demand. And we will see a decline when people start to leave the island in the fall, or when we have vaccine awash, where there's so much available that you can get it at so many places that people are then getting it. And that's not yet occurred, and we don't know when that's going to occur. Roberto?
Great.
You nailed it.
Will will there be alternative sites as we open up the vaccine priority and opportunities? Will there be other sites on Nantucket?
As
Well,
the state allows. So
Yeah, I
as of right now, I
right
wouldn't.
now, as it stands right now, I know that there's a hope that other pharmacies or other physician dental offices or other things could get vaccine. It's yet to be understood if that actually comes to a reality. But those quantities, I don't know what they would be either. That's why we've set up this large area and call it a state town blended site so that we can scale it to continue having people have access on many, many days. So Melissa, the answer is we don't know. I know that on back in America, this isn't, this is different than America over here. I would say that you'll find them at so many different places. What I constantly hear is the complaints get larger because the availability at those places varies so much. They don't always get an opportunity, or they drive long distances to get them and then they're not there. So I would hope that we can continue what we're doing. And if there's any ability for Roberto or I to have any other places open up that are not from the hospital, I mean, quite frankly, it's a huge operation to staff, at the scale that we are. But anything that we can get out there is better than, being static with the size we are. I hope we get more.
Great. And Roberta, you had mentioned to me in an email, but I don't know that I've seen much outreach on this, and maybe I've just missed it, but are you having a call for volunteers to help at vaccine clinics? And if so, can we maybe post somewhere how, or talk to people about how they can sign up to volunteer to help?
Yes, we do have a volunteer sign up out on all of our social media. It went out in the town manager's report.
Yeah, the newsletter. Yep, that's where I got it. Yep.
It came out through there. It's on all the social media. Let me try to find it here so I can share my screen and put it up. But yes, and that gets us all in for both clinical and non-clinical.
Great. And obviously you can only sign up to volunteer clinically if you have clinical experience, correct? Because I was like, oh, maybe I could give somebody a shot, but I don't have clinical experience, so I can only sign up as a volunteer.
And not just experience, but an active license.
License, yes, okay.
And we've also, Michelle, my chief nurse, set up a simulation lab for vaccinations at the hospital that we will put people through if they meet the criteria for doing vaccinations and just haven't done them in a while. We'll make sure that folks are trained and competent if they want to come out and lend a hand.
Fabulous. So I just have two other quick questions. I think you mentioned, Gary, in your statement earlier about communication efforts, and I wonder, as a town in the health department and board of health, what we can be putting together now to proactively help spread those messages, maybe with Janet and the economic task force, helping just to give businesses toolkits, communication toolkits about how to bring employees in safely and how to advise our guests to arrive safely. Any information like that, I think, would be really helpful. And then my last question is, will the Board of Health be considering any restrictions or any emergency orders, or returning back to some of our emergency orders, given the state that the state Nantucket's in at the moment? And that will be my last question. Thanks, Don.
So two quick ones for that. The volunteer sign up is actually right under the coronavirus page in our town website as well. So let me pull that up. Hopefully I can get the screen right this time. Yeah, look, it's all of us, of course. So it's right here in the town of Nantucket's website. You can go to coronavirus, and it's right there, COVID volunteers. If you'll probably see these on social media, that QR code also takes you straight to the website. And it's everything we're looking for, and it brings you straight into the sign-up sheet. We'll stop that. And then as far as the are we going to be going to more strict restrictions? It's not mine to decide. It is the Board of Health's, and the Board of Health meeting is next week. However, I'm not going to be recommending to roll anything back yet, mainly because we were in a worse spread just 4 months ago, and the same restrictions were in place, and we were able to get it under control. What is happening right now is that, just like Matt said, people are letting their guard down. What we're trying to do is get the information out there to get to get into people's forefronts, the forefront of their mind again. It's not over. And one of the things we're running into is just with people coming in from all over the country, people who are vaccinated, they don't realize that the CDC is still recommending that you wear masks, even if you are vaccinated. So it's that sort of thing. It's kind of a re-education process. But I'm not going to be recommending that we do any further restrictions again. I think I don't want to be detrimental to our own island. It won't be super effective.
Melissa, I'll answer it this way. I think where we need to put effort through this town format or through the Board of Health is in only those things that are actionable that can really result in a change, because people are tired of hearing wear a mask, get vaccinated, wash your hands, social distance. They're just tired of it. And quite frankly, when I'm driving around town, or my team is, we're all observant on lack of COVID compliance, which actually on this island, I find is pretty compliant. Kids are wearing, if you go back to where we were when we started this, you'd have people wearing masks halfway. Kids weren't wearing masks. Folks were running around Stop and Shop, even though we were saying there's a pandemic coming and they weren't taking it seriously. Now I believe they are, but it's when people get into denser households or they're coming from out of state in their mask and they get to a lodge and they're with 4 or 5 people, the masks come off, they socialize, they may not be vaccinated, and boom, we've got a COVID case, an index case starting. So it's the behaviors in the home, it's the behaviors in where you're at in housing. It's how we recommend to employers to bring people in safely so that there's less likelihood that their staff that are spending money on are going to be impacted and would hurt the business, if they were infected and then came into the business and infected others. Those actionable things are, I think, where Roberto and I can help with messaging, or we all know this, so it's not like we've learned so much. I think we know what to say.
Jason, you had your hand up.
Yeah, most of my questions were answered. So thank you, Gary and Roberto and Melissa, for asking some of those. Just sitting here thinking, Roberto, I think you said 400 vaccines administered a day is our capacity. Like, we could do that if we had the vaccines.
Well, we're doing that now, Jason.
400 a day?
We're doing that as of today. And we could go higher if we had vaccines and we restaff the number of stations that we have for vaccines and change the distances and what we're roping off for those that might have been there to see the operation. So we can do a large amount. The question is getting the vaccine to do it.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. So I get a lot of the questions of when it opens up to the general public, how are we going to be able to handle that? Is it still going to be, 10 a.m. on Saturday for 20 minutes, you get your appointment, and then you wait till the next week?
That's exactly.
I know you don't really have the answers, but that's the questions I'm getting.
Yeah, the good thing about the system that's in place now with the open scheduling is, yes, let's just say 2,000 doses are available, and it's the general public, and we know it's early, so there's going to be a crush on the website to go in. We know that a time and a day that people are looking at or have open is reserved to that individual who's opened it until they either select it or close it, and then it moves on to whoever else is available. So that's how you might have looked at a time and then you say, no, let me look at another one. Then you go back and it's no longer there because it doesn't stay held for you and it won't give you an error message. So that's why you can scroll through things and it goes quickly. So we will see just like we did with lower groups when we had less vaccine, that in the very beginning, there's a crush. And then as we get more vaccine and we open up more and increase capacity, and then we'll get to a point where we're awash in vaccine and we'll be trying to find people to use the vaccine. You know, it just takes a amount of time to get there. So plan on a couple of months and maybe longer of a crush like that as we have more and more people come to the island that also want to get vaccinated. Or as Matt had said, you know, the coastal tourists coming over that know they might be able to get on that site and come to Nantucket and get a vaccine. It's a state site. It's open to everybody that's in the state or that's coming here that's working or going to school and have self-attested. So we hope that it'll last longer than 20 minutes, but we know that the demand is high, which is great. And that's how the process will continue.
Okay. Matt, Jared, can I ask follow-ups? Are we seeing people from Nantucket going off island, going to Foxborough to get?
You have in very small numbers. There was a point of time where they were going to Martha's Vineyard, you know, and we would joke as presidents of hospitals in the Mass General of, why are you sending me patients, you know? But you know, people have different reasons related to why they want to go to different communities. Sometimes it's they have a place to spend the night and there's something available. Their kids got them an appointment. So they vary. But people are coming over here because they've been told by their physicians that to go to our website and see if they can get an appointment. And quite frankly, I'm glad they did, because it was at a point where we didn't have enough residents that were eligible to fill up the vaccine slots that we had. And so now that we're moving into this other phase, that's no longer the case again, but we'll still have that happen. It's quick on the draw. You know, it's basically playing the lottery again with how fast it'll fill up. But it'll fill up in 15 or 20 minutes.
Okay. Last question. Will it help for when it opens up to the general public for everybody to, or as many people as possible to pre-register? Does that just, no, not really? Okay.
You know, what we did early on when we had a town website where we asked people with no vaccine available yet to go sign up, so that when an eligible phase opened, that allowed us to gauge how many people wanted the vaccine and how much we should be ordering and what size of a group we should be putting together for vaccinations. And then there was a logistical need to transfer that information over to the Mass General so that we could then enter it. And it was a cumbersome process. And there were some people that were missteps in that just based on how the software worked. The open access system, which gives you that access now, is there because we know everybody wants it. So Jason, we would be trying to register 50,000 people for something that we don't have yet. And then the question is, well, when do you get it based on when you registered? Are you here when that registration date comes up? So it's very logistically challenging to do that with both first and second doses, just because of the need to guarantee a second dose.
Okay, so it might makes sense to just maybe at least sign up with the patient gateway, make sure all that's up to date, make sure you get your password, those kind of
And
steps.
you know, thanks for pointing that out. Yes, when you come in for a vaccine and you're in patient gateway, it does make the process a lot quicker. And as it is right now, you're getting in and out of there in 15 to 20 minutes, you know, from the time you check in. But we would highly recommend that you sign up in patient gateway, but you don't need to either. And that's how we wanted to make it simple. If you're not going to get care at the Mass General or within our system, you can still do open scheduling and come in and we'll still get you the vaccine. So if care is what you want, a continual thing at the Cottage Hospital or the Mass General, definitely do the gateway so that that's part of your care package.
Thank you.
Is there a daily on-call list for if you have leftover vaccines as you're getting towards the end of the day, or are you not having that problem with no shows or late cancellations?
You know, that's a great question. And we when we were 2 weeks ago getting an X number of doses a day and we didn't have enough community members eligible to get it, we would find that we would have 4 or 5 doses available. And so we were having people that would come up that said they couldn't get an appointment for the time they wanted. And they would give us their name and their telephone number, and we would call them and get them in, you know, if we had stuff at the end of the day. That's how we were handling it on a first come, first served basis. We will still take names if folks say, I can't get an appointment, and if there's something available, we would like to get one. And if we have something available, we'll certainly make that phone call. We are not going to waste a dose. You know, we'll find an arm to get it in.
That's great. Matt?
Good, Don. Yep. Yeah, I'll follow up, Gary. I had some family members who on one of the really windy days, some of the vaccine tourists dropped out. And so they got called from people there saying they're available. There's a few more doses. They're already ready. So that's how they got there. They were not able to get it. They weren't, so they were able to do it because of that reason. It was really windy. The boat wasn't running and they were able to get vaccinated, which is great. I've also had another friend it's easier to get it here. The system, even though you've got to be timed and be lucky, it's easier than the state he's from. And he signed up here and came here and did it. And so that's a credit to us a bit because he found it easier than in his home state. So, I think that's a credit to him to be, to your system to be able to do it. But we're going to have a tough time. I agree with you guys. We're going to have a tough time getting enough people done when everything's at its busiest.
Right. Yeah. That day was 45 vaccines. 45 people didn't make it on the boat on that day. And we were able to find 45 people using the state's algorithm on who is next in the phase related to, comorbidity. So we follow it that way. But with the state now being by the 19th, 100% open for everybody, it's not going to be a problem for us to make phone calls and get vaccine people, get people to come in. But we will write a list every day, but there's no guarantees that there'll be an excess vaccine.
And so I can't help myself. 45 on 200 puts us just under 20%. So that gives you an idea what the potential others were. That's just one day. Maybe Monday's busier than Tuesday. Say it's 10 or 15%. If we're trying to figure out herd immunity, there's the math. There's a good example. So.
Are there any other questions? I don't see any public hands raised. Economic Task Force update?
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair. The task force continues to meet almost weekly. We've had a couple of weeks off since we started meeting in January. We met for the 10th time today. And I'm happy to give you a report that the Rock Solid Fund had 42 applications amounting to $450,000, which is significantly over what they can provide. The proposals will be scored and recommendations will be made next week for the distribution of those funds, some 153,000 of which came from town resources. The group also talked about a request from the restaurants to figure out if we can have some activities to get families to come to town this summer to fill the 5 to 6:30 dinner hour. And I'll be talking with some cultural organizations about ideas that they might have that I would then talk with the health department and Parks and Rec and wherever we needed to go to see if we can provide some of that experience to have families come into town and enjoy that dinner hour. We're also talking to restaurants about the need to provide a family-friendly menu at that time. We have put up a technology and consulting resource list, actually 2 different lists on the COVID-19 page or the task force page. And it lists the different kinds of technology that different economic sectors can use to find ways to interact with their clients or customers in non-in-person ways. Working internally on the summer 2021 page that Melissa mentioned a little earlier, we're looking at a bunch of different other town websites to see what's the best one that we would use, and then we will distribute that widely once we get it. We've had a big request from realtors to have that to put into packets and in-houses for people renting to know what the rules are on the island. We had well, obviously we're talking about outdoor dining tonight, and there was a lengthy discussion this afternoon that I just wanted to comment on briefly regarding the effort of several town departments to support all businesses to have a safe and successful 2021. And a reminder that Nantucket is in line with all the state guidelines. We are not more restrictive than the state at this point. And finally, we didn't get to it today because we had so much fun talking about everything else, but I sent an email out today to the nonprofit community because part of our mission is to support nonprofits to prepare for and execute a safe and successful 2021. So I've asked them for their ideas that I will bring back to the task force. And I also mentioned to them this notion that we might be looking for some kind of programming in the early evening or late afternoon and early evening to support families coming into town for dinner. And that's my report. I'm happy to take any questions.
Does anyone have any questions for Janet? No, great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other reports and comments related to COVID-19 this evening? Melissa?
Thanks, Donna. It's just, I guess, maybe a follow-up question. I've been sitting here ruminating on the having enough vaccine doses, and I know that Gary's off the call, but I'm wondering, is it worth us just sending a letter? And Roberto, again, we defer to your judgment on this, but to Senator Sear and Rep. Fernandez, just to make sure they understand the situation and we're in, or do you feel like it's clear that, and I'm sure this is the same across the Cape and Martha's Vineyard as well, as everyone's going to start to see their populations increasing. I just want to make sure we're advocating for the doses that we need and at every available opportunity. So I'm open to suggestions.
I actually spoke to Senator Sear last week at our Cape and Islands Health Agents Coalition meeting. One of the, actually not a well-known thing about Senator Sear, he used to work for the Department of Public Health. So he still uses a lot of his contacts there. And they definitely know it won't hurt sending some sort of a letter or request. He is trying to work for them to increase doses here, both him and Dylan Fernandez. They are working hard. The issue that we're running into is actually a supply problem. We've been basically begging for the Johnson & Johnson vaccine so that we can increase our throughput, because you don't have to do the 15-minute or 30-minute waiting period on that, so you can move people quicker. But right now, those are being prioritized for vaccine hesitant populations in I think it's 11 major cities. And then even then, we were this $15 million dose mishap that we had in Baltimore really kind of threw a wrench in it. That's kind of what Gary was alluding to, that we were going to be awash with vaccines mid-April, but now that this manufacturer in Baltimore screwed up 15 million doses, it cut down our expected vaccine shipments to the state of Massachusetts by about 500,000 doses. So what we were originally expecting to be a flood of vaccines at the end of next week is down to a trickle. So we can only do the 1,000 to 1,500 vaccines per week because that's all we're getting. We have the capacity to hit thousands of people a week. It's just we need the doses. I think lobbying to get doses won't be a bad thing now that it's opening up to the general public. It's just we need to find a way to get more doses.
Fabulous. Well, I'm not sure if the rest of the board is in agreement with that, but I would completely support a letter from this board, just making sure that the Senator Sear and Rep. Fernandez are armed with the information they need to be our best advocates. And I'm sure that they're doing a great job, but if a letter could help, I don't see that it could hurt in any way. But I don't know what you think, Don, about that.
Well, I would absolutely be agreeable with that. Is it something that that maybe we want to draft and just have circulated to the board? Sound okay? Matt, Jason, good?
Sorry, John. Yeah, I'm fine with it. We're an economic engine for this state during the summer, and I think, they need to take. I just think that a lot of the politicians come out here and fundraise. There are board members from the hospitals and things that are here in the summer. There's a lot of different angles, some which many of us have tried, but I think I think a letter is entirely appropriate, and I think sort of our importance to the state from a, from a business perspective, as well as sort of the uniqueness of the turnover we have and everything else should all, should factor into it. We're not a static town with the same amount of people. So yeah, I think we should be asking, and the worst that we can get is no.
Okay, I think we have consensus on that. Before I move on to the next agenda item, we have an attendee that's not identified. Actually, we have an attendee that's not identified by a name and someone who's just identified by 2 initials. To be able to participate, you need to fully identify yourself, or we'll have to remove you from the meeting. You are able to watch it on YouTube, but we've had some issues in the past with people who are unidentified. So please change, or we will have to remove you from the attendee list. Thank you. Next up, we have public comment for items that are not COVID-19 related and otherwise not on our agenda for discussion. This is when someone can bring something to the attention to the board. It may not be able to be commented upon tonight, but it can be scheduled for a future agenda item or policy discussion, or something that can be looked into by the town. Janine Randolph.
Hi. Okay, I've never done this before. So what I've done is, let me introduce myself. My name is Janine Randolph. I've been on the island since 1993. I'm a global entrepreneur and a visionary. So I was in some conversations with some significant donors that wanted to make a big difference on our island. And we got to thinking, and what I'm going to read to you is the result of that conversation. I'm representing myself. I've been talking to all the nonprofits and people that would benefit, but I'm going to read this. I don't know how to turn my screen on, so I don't know if you can see me, but here it goes. Dear Select Board members, the goal today is simple: to inspire you to envision a different use for land by asking the gun range to do an indoor range and/or postponing your decision so that a business plan can be provided for a more varied use.
Janine, this is on our agenda for discussion if it's in regard to the gun range.
Well, okay, so sorry. This was the mental health center. Is that on your agenda?
It is not. It is not. So if you would like to speak about something like that, but I'm just a little bit worried that it's getting into an agenda item.
Okay, Donna, I want to be respectful. Basically, I'm proposing to build a new mental health center. And I have an idea that I think is a win-win for everyone on the island, including Steve Holgate. So it's a very positive letter. And I just want to make sure that I can read it, because I don't think anyone would be offended. I think they'll be inspired. So do I do this now or do I wait?
I think that if it's related specifically to the land where the gun range is planned, or it has a lease they're being asked to renew, you need to speak about it during that time. I believe that you're reading the same letter that you've already sent to us.
Yes,
Okay.
that letter. So later on today, is that what you're saying?
Yes, I mean, I'm a little bit concerned because we don't have the other thing that you're talking about on our agenda for discussion, but you can certainly raise the point, and it's something we could talk about as a potential future agenda item to talk about the center.
That's fine. I just want to read it because the truth is, as a military person, I'm not anti-gun by any means. And so since Steve is on the line, he's hard to get a hold of. I'd like to read this, and then we can talk about it later, but I'd like to just read it.
Okay, I will come back to you under the agenda item.
Okay, thank you. And I apologize.
No, it's okay. It's a little bit hard to navigate. Thank you so much for understanding.
Okay, bye.
Okay, next up, are there any other public comments before I move on? Seeing none, I don't believe that we have any new business. Approval of, can we take, if there are no changes to the minutes, can we take minutes, warrants, and contracts together unless anyone has any questions or comments on either minutes or pending contract? Jason?
On the contracts, I just want to be removed. I don't want to vote on the one contract from Ryan Mitchell.
Oh, yes.
I'll just recuse from that one, but I can vote on everything else.
Okay. Do you want to just make a motion to do the minutes and warrants?
Yeah, so moved.
Is there a second?
I've got a comment. It's just an easy.
Sorry,
fix.
Matt. On the minutes?
On 324 on the minutes, it said that I asked that there be a kitchen in it, and that wasn't what I said or meant. It was for that price, I expected a kitchen in it. So, Erica, it was nobody a field house, and it talked, and so it said for that. You said something about I asked for a kitchen in it. I said for that price, a kitchen should have been in it. It's not a major change, but I don't want people to think I want to put a kitchen in it and have it become $3 million. So, it was just a slight change, but other than that, I second the minutes.
Thank you, Matt, with that change. Is that okay, Jason?
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor by roll call, Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
John Holgate, aye. And then on the pending contracts, are there any other questions or comments?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
John Holgate, aye. Jason, do you want to vote on the few, or are you okay to just recuse?
I can just recuse. Yeah. It
Okay.
passed. Yeah.
Thanks.
Sorry, Jason, I should have separated those out.
That's right.
Consent items. We have some gift acceptances.
Motion to approve?
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor by roll call, Melissa Murphy,
Yes, with thanks.
Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
John Holgate, aye. Yes, letters of thanks will be sent. Citizen departmental requests. We have a request from Bartlett Tree Experts for them. This has been a request that they've made for the last couple of years. It's for a noise bylaw waiver.
Motion to approve. I did recently ask if there was any complaints because we do this every year, and the answer was no.
I know Jim Cook is here if there are any questions.
Second.
Actually, just before I take the motion, we do have a hand raised. Mary Ferguson.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, as far as complaints, I know myself, I've called the police on multiple occasions, and I was hoping that those complaints from previous years would have gotten through to the board, but apparently not. I did submit a quick write-up just before this meeting, so I'm assuming no one had a chance to read it. But there have been a lot of complaints because they show up at 4:35 in the morning. And given the hours currently of the bylaw, which is from 7 till 8, I'm not sure why that isn't generous enough for them to, and then let the bylaw stand so that the citizens can be protected by that bylaw. I lived on Holbert for 30 years, and it's I find it very difficult in the morning at 5:30 with our windows right on the street and the windows being open, having them show up to either spray, and you don't know what they're spraying while your windows are open, or their equipment as they're either backing up their trucks and beeping. I just don't quite understand why the citizens aren't protected from that, why they are exempted from the bylaw.
Madam Chair, do you want me to just rescind my motion so we can just have a discussion, have Jim speak, or?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, Jason.
Sure. Yeah, I'll just rescind that for now.
Thank you.
Just to note, I have called the police multiple times, multiple years, and they keep telling me there's nothing that they can do. So it seems to end there, which is disappointing.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Libby.
Just a comment. We didn't ask the police department. I was just trying to text with the chief about whether or not they've gotten any complaints. He's not aware of them. But we also didn't ask the police department to look for complaints because most likely they would have been referred to us anyway, because the noise bylaw waiver in past years obviously came through our office. So this is news to us, and maybe Mr. Cook could address it if he is on.
Jim Cook.
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, please go ahead.
Well, first, I just want to apologize for hearing that, Mrs. Ferguson. As far as what we tried to do from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. is no backup beepers. That's our office policy. Sorry, I've got some light. We try to use the quietest equipment that we can to get our treatments done. So PTO driven rigs that are essentially as loud as the truck. And we are switching to even gas trucks to try to make them a little bit more quiet than the diesels. And to take it a step further, we've tried to use battery operated backpacks as opposed to any other type of backpacks because they don't make any noise at all. So we are trying to be as stealthy and as quiet as possible. And the reason we're trying to start early is to, avoid coming in contact with people during those applications. As far as spraying chemicals in the air, we also have some techniques where, if a tree's a certain size, we're using an injection or some other means to not spray products high in the air. What else are we trying to do?
Yeah. Our windows are bedroom windows are right on the street.
Excuse me, Mary.
Oh, sorry.
We don't do back and forth. I'll
Okay.
recognize you to speak again when Jim is finished.
I guess one other thing is, our clients know we're coming. So if we're on their property and treating their property, the windows are closed. But, we can certainly take any other steps that you guys want us to make it work. I thought I saw on the agenda that it was 4 a.m., but it would be 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. for town and any other populated area, potentially construction sites where they're very busy before we get there.
Sorry, that was a typo. It is 5.
Oh, thank you, Erica.
Hi.
Jason?
Yeah, it was my understanding that this was more of quieter things. It was spraying. It was so the trucks could make noise, but it wasn't chainsaws and guys yelling up trees, cutting down branches. That was always my impression. So that's why I've always voted for it over the years. That it was the quietest form of your work.
That's correct. No chainsaws till 7:30 or 8 o'clock.
Can I speak?
Oh, yes, Mary. I don't know why your hand isn't going up. But
Oh, sorry.
go ahead.
When you pull out the hose off the wheel that it's wrapped on, it makes a lot of noise. When Yates backs up down the driveway to gas up, they have the beep, beep, beep. I mean, this is a highly densely populated area, and you can hear a pin drop. So the assumption that you don't hear these things is absurd. And the assumption that, a neighbor is going to have whose windows are on the street are going to have their windows closed. And so it's scary. I mean, I wake up at, 4:30 in the morning thinking, oh my goodness, I got to close the windows. What are they spraying over there? And it's just, it's hard to protect against that. And I just think that the bylaws are so generous with from 7 till 8. I still don't understand why we're doing that. We're figuring a business model at the expense of the citizens.
Mary, can I get a point of clarification? This is not the gas trucks or the garbage trucks that we're talking about.
Okay, well, originally I saw that it was, okay, well, it's all the above. It's both of them. So I apologize for throwing them in.
Yeah, no,
together.
I'm just that those are, that's
Yeah.
a different industry than what we're talking.
Okay. Yeah, it's just, you can't do that kind of work and be quiet, while at 4:30 or 5 in the morning. And it's just as noise increases in these neighborhoods, it's very frustrating. And I just don't understand why we do it.
Matt?
And my understanding was similar to Jason, that this was, that we had not had any complaints and that this was quiet things that were better to be done that time of day than trying to fit them in later. And so I guess a question for Jim, how often is this an everyday occurrence until October? How many days a week do you do this? Just give an idea of what you're doing and how much would be helpful for us, I guess.
Go ahead, Jim, and then I'll go to Erica.
Sure. So the spring applications are potentially 3 days a week. Summertime, it does go down a little bit. And then fall, it's just once in a while to October. But like I said, we are trying to be as quiet as possible. It is just spray applications. So sometimes it's a matter of like our truck being too loud. So we are trying to get the quieter gas trucks down there. And then if we ever do run into someone who's, not happy that we're there, we try to identify that and make sure we, take the right precautions to avoid that spot. But we are trying to be as quiet as possible.
Thank you, Erica.
I just wanted to note that I know that there's some exemptions in the noise bylaw specifically for like the Harbor Fuel trucks and the Yates gas trucks. And one of the reasons why these companies are allowed to go so early is because if they go later, they're going to be stuck in traffic. And that's going to be a big issue. So a lot of these companies go through early in the morning, especially in the summertime, because it's more detrimental the later they go.
Yeah, but again, like you're saying, those are already exempt. That's not what's being requested today.
Exactly, but she just noted.
Yeah. No, I think that's really helpful information. And I'm wondering if that's been more of the noise issue. Libby?
Just want to give you a quick little report from the chief, who was able to do a very quick review of noise complaints. It's noted that 5 noise complaints have been made by Ms. Ferguson since 2014, none since 2018. Only one of them was about Bartlett Tree in 2014. The rest were construction and other types of noise.
Mary Ferguson, I see that you've raised your hand again.
I kind of gave up with the town because they kept, when Bartlett Tree was there, he was quick to pull out his permit, and he was very pleased to say, I've been given approval from the select board. And the police said, there's nothing we can do about it. So it's hard to keep complaining when you think you're doing it in vain. So, and I'm almost sure it's been more than, I'm surprised it's only been with Bartlett Tree that one time. But, and for the record, the neighborhood has been concerned about the noise. And being on the Brant Point Association board, we do try to listen to the people in the neighborhood.
Thank you. Melissa?
Thanks, Dawn. I guess I'm feeling a little bit confused. What are the alternative? What's the alternative? If this isn't extended, what's the impact to Bartlett Trees and to those clients who have hired them to do that work?
Jim?
Just makes our job a lot more difficult to try to do these tasks from the normal time from 7:30 on. with those specific applications. But again, I just want to apologize to Mrs. Ferguson that was the case, and we're certainly happy to do whatever we can to accommodate anybody, but it would affect us negatively for sure.
Melissa?
Thank you, John. I guess just a follow up to that, I wonder, since we've really only heard from one neighbor and not a letter from, say, the association or any other anyone else in the neighborhood, and I certainly don't mean that to discount Ms. Ferguson's just discomfort with what's happening, but I'm as a matter of setting policy, we need to do it for the greater good. And so I'm curious if we let them do that this year, see how this year goes with their increased sensitivity to particularly Mrs. Ferguson's complaints. And if the association at whole has an issue, this comes up yearly for review by this board, they're certainly welcome to reach out to us and send a letter so that we can continue to work with Bartlett Trees to make it easier on everyone. As clearly you're there doing a service for people in the neighborhood who have asked you to do that work. It's not just municipal work, so to speak. So I'd be comfortable making a motion to approve this tonight and reevaluate next year and encourage the neighbors to keep us posted on how this goes, and also encourage them to reach out to Bartlett directly to see if there's alternatives that they can come up with and negotiate together.
I think that's a great suggestion. Jason?
I was just going to say, I agree.
Do you want to second that if that was
Sure.
that was the motion?
That's a motion. I'll second that.
That was a motion.
Matt?
I'm a little worried about it. Not that it isn't a good idea, Melissa, because I think it is, but I'm worried about it because the Brant Point Association non-voting taxpayers were the ones that put the noise article forward, and the noise article in a lot of their minds has been loosened, not tightened. And so I think we might be giving an incentive for a bunch of people to call and complain all summer so that we deal with something that they feel the town hasn't been dealing with. So I'm a little worried that, we're going to be setting up a perverse incentive here. I'm thinking it might make more sense to say, okay, Jim, you can do it 3 days a week in the spring and 2 days a week in the summer and 1 or 2 days a week in the fall, if that fits your schedule, so that people know that it's, it's not expanding, and not encourage, and see what happens. That would be another way to handle it, if that's
Melissa?
Thanks, Don, and thank you, Matt. I think that you raise really good points. My only concern, though, is that the particular noise from Bartlett's is very different and differentiated from the other types of noise that we heard from the town the non-voting taxpayers about. This is very different than that noise, and so I'm comfortable moving forward with this, and I would encourage them to continue to reach out to us and also to work with Bartlett's directly if it does feel in violation of their comfort level. But I'm very also wary to make policy based on a policy decision based on one community member's input. And as far as I'm concerned, the input we heard from the non-voting taxpayers was about different noise complaints, not this specific type. And I'm not even sure it included this.
I think there was a lot of construction noise concerns, and it was definitely heightened this season because things were delayed with so many construction projects because of our things being shut down due to COVID. Now we do have a motion on the table, and is there any further discussion on the motion? Okay, then we'll go to a vote. Melissa Murphy?
Aye.
Jason Bridges?
Aye.
Matt Fee?
No.
Okay, I'll vote in favor, and hopefully, Jim, you can really work with the neighborhood. I mean, obviously, some of the neighborhood has hired you, but to be respectful of the other neighbors and to mitigate sound in any way that you can. And we'll revisit it next year. Okay, thank you. Oh, Mary Ferguson, we have gone to a vote, but I'm happy to take a final comment from you.
Yeah, I just want to remind the board that there are town bylaws, and the whole intent of those bylaws were to protect the citizens. And they are probably the most lenient hours in the state of Massachusetts, from 7 till 8 at night. And once you start breaking it one way, what's the point of the bylaw?
Thank you. I don't want to get into too much of a debate on that point, but we hear your concerns. Next on the agenda is we have a request from Winthrop Nantucket LP / Harbor Fuel Oil Corp. For an extension of the bulk fuel license at 9 Salem Street, FKA 8 New Whale, until December 2021. And Stephen Murphy is here to walk us through.
Madam Chair, thank you. Madam Chair, thank you, and good evening, board. This extension we're asking for, and I'm in approval for, is through the end of the year. The 3-month extension you granted back in the end of December did provide some information for going forward, and the process is in play. What's going to happen now is this will give us time to work together with the appropriate environmental agencies in order to make sure the demolition of the tanks that have been decommissioned are done properly and safely. Also, it also provides the service to the boat basin for their fuel docks for the summer. This is not any fuel license for future tanks or new tanks. Those would still have to come before the board.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions, concerns, motions? Matt?
I'll move that we approve it. We've done this previously, and we need to do it to get it done.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor by roll call. Melissa Murphy?
Aye.
Jason Bridges?
Aye.
Matt Fee?
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. Thank you very much. Next up on our agenda, we have a public hearing to consider applications for 2021 outdoor dining expansion and alterations of premises.
Dawn, I'm going to recuse myself.
Thank you, Melissa. So I will open the public hearing, and I will turn over the presentation to Amy Baxter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to review real quick what I would suggest how we go through this, since we have a lot of things to discuss this evening. I will share my screen in a second with the presentation, not very dissimilar than what we discussed a few weeks ago on this matter. There are going to be 3 areas we're going to ask for a vote. I'll review those, being the private dining, public dining, and certain conditions. I'm going to suggest we handle each as its own category. And then when we get into the public spaces where I expect the most comment, that we deal with each street, have a discussion and take public comment on each location separately so that we don't cross a lot of comments. So that would be my suggestion. I'm going to begin to share the screen. And we are going here. Okay, here we go. Okay. Unfortunately, you guys are covering where I need to turn things. There we go. Okay. I'm going to start and just review briefly the considerations we have before the board this evening for review, discussion, and for a vote. First section would be review and approval of private property outdoor expansions per emergency order 50, which I'll review in a second. Second group will be review and approval of the public property outdoor expansion plan, road closures and sidewalk dining. Approving the street and sidewalk license agreement conditions for each location, approved timeline for those closures, and then the recommendations for both. The third discussion will be establishing conditions of all outdoor spaces to include some of the things we've discussed previously, meaning if there's any discussion on closing hours for these spaces and how we will handle live music and the permitting of such for the year. So those are the three areas. Briefly, I'd like to review the law here that we're dealing with and to explain to those tuning in this evening that the reason that we deal with these restaurants specifically is that this emergency order deals with liquor licensing and the service of alcohol, which is why we need to do this process. It allows for you as a local licensing authority to approve requests for expansion of outdoor table service or extensions that were earlier granted approvals pursuant to the order. This extends it till 60 days after the end of the state of emergency. You may issue extensions automatically to all licenses, which we may suggest for private, but may do so on request from individual licensee, which we will do for the public spaces. And you may modify any prior approvals that we did in 2020 as you deem proper and appropriate, including snow removal hopefully won't be an issue, pedestrian traffic, other similar concerns. So we may go in and modify some of these spaces based on the experience from last year and any concerns that arose from that. So that's just a brief review of the law and what we are dealing with. And again, these are approved just here locally. It does not need to be reviewed by the state. We just need to report what the extensions and the approvals will be. Okay. First, we will deal with private property. And Madam Chair, if you need to stop me at any point, please do so, but I'll just review this first section. I've given you a chart of the private property locations that have requested outdoor expansions this year. There may be some that come after. That's fine. We can certainly do those at a later date or vote to approve these extensions based on certain conditions should they come later in time. Most of these, I would say 95% are exactly the same as extensions from last year. They're just requesting extension of the approval for outdoor spaces. Maybe one or two requested different tables, just as we would with any liquor license approval. The approval will set the setup in motion, and then we will go through with inspections and determine the final setup and report back to the board and to the state as to the final setup. I'll review these just quickly. Charlie Noble outdoor space, the same Chicken Box similarly as well. They are issued a food permit, which allows them to be open in the outdoors since they are generally do not have food service. Crew, similar. Fairgrounds, 56 Union, Island Kitchen, Kitty Murtaugh's, Lola 41, The Muse, or The Whale, which also has a public application, but they do request some seats on the alleyway alongside the building, which is privately owned and have permission for. Proprietors, which also will be in the public portion, also has permission to use private space next door to their property. Saltbox, Sea Grill, Slip 14, Straight Wharf Tavern, The Beat, and the VFW. And these are all, like I said, mostly the same as last year. I did a quick review here of what we have to consider for private property. The vote of the select board to allow expanded seating and service on private property includes following conditions. Any approval that you make this evening will be made on a single season, non-precedent setting basis. If approved, all licensees must abide by all the rules, regulations, laws, advisories, and such issued by the town, state, and federal governments. These include all social distancing requirements. And each licensee, and I'm going to emphasize this, since we did this so quickly last year, must have the legal right to occupy the temporary extension We need these things in writing, which we're working on folks for. Some folks, it's on their existing property. If there's a landlord situation, most have given me written permission for that. So a letter from the landlord or the owner granting the right to utilize the space is required. So before final setup is approved, we will make sure that that is received. And approval of these private spaces is effective immediately. They're subject again to inspection by or alteration if there's any concerns by any town departments in a normal basis. And again, I've included here a suggested motion that includes the emergency order. So I'll stop here and see if there's any questions on private property.
Yep, Amy, I'd like to take any public comments on these separate items, but we'll have to take all the votes at the end after I close the public hearing. So I can't see all of the board members, so call out if you have something, but is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak on any of these private property expansion items? I'm not seeing any hands, so let's move on to the next.
Okay.
Next portion.
Great.
I'm sorry, Matt.
Yeah, Don, can we, is it possible to close one section at a time and put it to bed rather than have to sort of keep it in our head and vote later?
I would love to do that, but I don't think that it follows the way we put it on the agenda. We didn't do separate public hearings. So we'll just come back to these. If you're comfortable with these motions at the end, I think maybe we can just reference them.
I'm good. I'll write notes. I'm just getting old. It takes me a little bit of time.
I have more than one screen going to try and manage this.
I promise that actually what I was going to do is write any sort of edits or any sort of things that come up so that I can repeat those before the final vote for you. So I'm old too. I'll continue to do that as well. Okay, so I will move to section 2, which, why isn't it going? Here we go. For some reason, we're stuck here. Excuse me a second. I don't know why. Okay. Wow, I don't, it's, okay, this is going to be an issue for me here. Hold on. Give me a second. Yeah. All right, we're going to do it this way. There we go. Sorry about that. Okay. Public space. Here we go. I'll go over just briefly. We have here, obviously, in our chart, just a collection of all of the license numbers and public spaces. And if there's anything different from 2020, we'll just go through each one in each street, as I mentioned prior to as well. This just kind of puts it out in writing for you. Conditions of the license. So just go over quickly. Something we certainly need to be a little more detailed about this year is conditions of a street license. We certainly included insurance requirements and such last year. That was provided by our council and insurance rep. So we're going to continue to add to that based on our experience last year. Obviously adhering to state guidelines regarding social distancing. As such, masks must be worn at all times. Face shields not being sufficient, again, from the state. Also providing the QR code to include on all signage to allow customers to scan for complete up-to-date information on the town and COVID-related restrictions, guidelines, and help of that sort. So hopefully that'll help. Sidewalk dining, we very much need to discuss as far as keeping clear as much as possible for appropriate pedestrian access. Nothing can be on the sidewalk that impedes the pedestrian flow. Certainly, we have kind of put out there what the ADA guidance was, and I had them review last year. I'll have them review again this year as well. The guidance was that on Main Street sidewalks, we should have 5 to 6 feet clearance between buildings and shares. And then the lesser traveled sidewalk should be 3 to 4 clearance. So that's something we really want to pay attention to this year as well. limiting tables to parties of 2 or 4, nothing larger, and then 1 lane of tables wherever they are, not one by the building, one by the sidewalk. So there might be some areas where we edit that. So that would be the suggestion there as well. Additionally, as we just spoke about, even on private property, outdoor seating on sidewalks or streets may not extend past the restaurant frontage unless permission is granted by the impacted neighbors in writing to the town and select board. So we will require that in writing to make sure that whomever they have tables in front of, if it's past their restaurant frontage, and this is a legal standard across the state, Boston, whomever, is that is in writing. And again, some more accessible requirements. ABCC patio guidelines, this is another thing we're going to be a little bit stricter on this year. A lot of folks did do this, but that the premises must be enclosed by a fence, rope, or other means, a lot of rope stanchions and such to prevent access from a public walkway. There should be some demarcation of the space. So it's just not sidewalk with tables and everything else on them. So we'll have to add that in some areas as well. And they must be contiguous or in view of the location, which most are. So we don't seem to think that'll be a problem. Occupancy, another important issue here is that all establishments are held to their current maximum occupancy as listed on their COI, or unless otherwise adjusted by health or others based on septic or other types of limits, regardless of the expanded space. Again, the expanded space is for making up for those tables lost and space lost for indoor dining. So it's not meant to increase the occupancy of that. Otherwise, it would require an official alteration of premises. Another area that we need to focus on are responsibilities of the restaurants. Procurement of all the equipment in the area is at the responsibility of the restaurant. We're certainly looking to help where we can as far as stanchions, as far as assistance with some decking and some other items as well, but that is their responsibility for the restaurant. They can decorate some of the barriers and such as they did last year with approval of the town. Daily maintenance and cleaning of the area inside and around outside the improved dining area, very important point. That was where we had some issues, not issues, but we had some complaints last year. That space is now part of their operations and their responsibility to keep clean. And that's a very important point that we want to make as well. Sidewalk, street, what have you, that is their responsibility to clean up. Obviously, something happens overnight, something happens safety-wise, we would certainly take care of that, but they need to maintain the restaurant. And then help with line queue management, of course, not blocking access to the sidewalk or to extend into streets or other hazardous areas. And then lastly, rights of the town and the select board. Some legal language as far as reserving the right to revoke permission to allow dining on public streets and sidewalks for several reasons, should they occur, if it's not in compliance, if there's impacting pedestrian access or public safety, or if anyone else in town, chief of police, determines that the operation is having negative effects. So those effects are part of the conditions of the license. Of course, this is a motion, again, very similar. We can review that later. I will start, if okay, with First Street that we'll discuss. This is India between Center and Federal Street. We discussed this last year and approved this, as I mentioned before, late in August. And at that point, it wasn't, we weren't able to kind of get it up and running. So it did not happen. But the restaurant that would benefit from this would be proprietors mostly, possibly Company of the Cauldron. I'm back and forth with them right now, but we have not received an application. Basically, the request is for a partial street closure. It would be a lane closure, which the current lane on the left side is street. There would be some decking installed past the pavement here, closer to in front of the restaurant there, over the cobblestones to allow for some tables there. It would remove approximately 6 to 8 one-hour parking spaces along this side because traffic would need to move along this side, and we would need to shift some parking and loading to the opposite side of the street here. So that would be a similar request there now. I will stop and ask if there's questions or comments on this.
Does anyone on the board have questions? And this is a public hearing if anyone from the public wishes to speak or ask a question. I'm not seeing any, Amy.
Okay.
Just keep
Great.
going.
I'll keep going. And of course, if folks have comments at the end, we can go back. Next is Federal Street. And the only request on this street is the same as last year that benefits Boarding House in the Pearl. And again, it will be only in front of their establishment and their building frontage. It takes about 3 1-hour parking spaces, and you see the setup here. It would be exact same setup here, which worked out well into the street, and then allows access on the sidewalk for pedestrians. So there would be no significant changes to this as well. Any comments on here?
Anyone on Federal?
Good.
Not seeing any hands.
Okay. Next, this is Still Dock, which is between Easy and South Water. The restaurant here is Club Car. This is the same as last year. It removes up to about 3 1-hour parking spaces. It also involves a private property owner here. These parking spaces in this area is privately owned. There was an agreement last year with that owner, which we would require again. I was present for it last year, and it worked out very well as far as how they would have their parking here for their store. It's for folks that work at the store there, so it worked out pretty well there. And then the street would be closed further up here to allow access to the garbage still there as well. So it wouldn't be directly at the front at Easy Street, but a little far in here as well. They also have 4 tables alongside the building on Main Street, which did not impede anything. We're up against the building, 2 tops, so that would be additional space there too as well. And we had no issues with this space last year and expect it the same. Any comments?
Anyone questions, comments? No.
Okay. Huh. Okay, it's messing with me now. Sorry. Let's go back. Want you to vote on private property, clearly. Okay. Here we go. Oak Street between South Water and Federal. This street closure was for benefit of Queequegs Town and Ventuno. Removes approximately 8 1-hour parking spaces. Again, decking would be required to cover the street and it would keep the sidewalk open for pedestrians. The condition here and the one other building affected is the Athenaeum, is to make sure that the exit here, which is somewhat between buildings, is kept completely clear and that there's a clear path to the sidewalk for those folks exiting the Athenaeum. In the back there, operated the space with not much problem there. We might have to add some separation between the 2 restaurants, a little bit more defined, but other than that, would be same setup. Any questions, comments on this? Nope. I'm good to move.
Seeing any hands.
Okay, well, next. Okay, so this, I expect we have some discussion on. And for this slide, just to disclose, I have a couple slides here where I've added photos because I knew we needed for discussion that weren't in the original packet. I didn't change information. I just have additional photos that I'll provide to the board after this that weren't in the original packet. So this street closure is for Cambridge between South Water and Easy Street. Mainly benefiting Nautilus and occasionally PPX, which is a special event location only. So it's not open restaurant to the public. The 2 options we have here is similar to last year, and I have additional photos to show you. The request would be for a full street closure. From the restaurant, dining space would be reduced based on the requirement I mentioned previously about needing permission to be in front of an additional building. We do not have that in this case. Therefore, we would reduce the space regardless of street closure, which would reduce the space by about 6 tables. It would have to end at the end of Nautilus. I'll show you where that is. And then we must add some ropes and stanchions to separate the dining from pedestrians on the sidewalk. This is one area we'll have to do that. Option 2 is a partial street closure, and we'll have to have a discussion on this. This certainly is recommended by Chief Pittman as well, based on traffic and some traffic issues. We certainly know that is going to increase greatly this year. There's certainly some concerns on this street as far as it being an access to the steamship and other folks, as well as that it created some backups, and that with increase in traffic, it will possibly do so some more. So the suggestion is to have traffic go down this way with a barrier just in front of the restaurant here. As well. If we go down a little bit. So the very least, as I was speaking before, is the dining tables have to end here at this red line. We do not have permission from the owner here to have dining tables in front of this establishment. Therefore, that loses one to the 6 tables here, and the trees
Amy,
would
can
have to
you
go.
speak to why that's changed from last year?
Well, as we did this last year, obviously it was done pretty quickly and last minute. And so it was put up in the time since then, and with legal counsel and other review, is that you should have permission again. And I took that straight from Boston and some other folks as well, is that permission needs to be in writing from any sort of establishment that you have your business in front of or tables in front of, written permission. We do not have that for this location. Most
So
others
we do have that from Craft Masters.
Yeah, Craft Masters and proprietors are most definitely working together on this, because they'll be using their drive space for nighttime dining. So they are she's very much in touch with those neighbors. But again, if before we set this up, we don't have all written permission, it's not happening. But yes, they are in touch. So because we don't have that in this case, we can't approve, or we should not approve directly in front of that building. So the question here is full street closure or partial, which would, if we look at it from up top here, now PPX would have a table or a couple tables on the other side of this a couple times a week, not constantly. So sometimes they would share that space here too. So we took the trees out. You can probably put some tables here, but it'd probably be just this lane here, because you would have to put barriers here. And I know the suggestion will be also, can you do put the barriers here and then have a at nighttime, or some nights have dining out there after a certain time where boats have all gone. Concern there is we don't have the ability to put down Jersey barriers or heavy barriers at a moment's notice or on a constant basis. And I think you need that for street dining regardless. I think I speak for the chiefs on that. That wouldn't be a possibility. So this is what that partial street closure would be, is probably tables. And there's more than 6 feet here, so we can probably put another, but it would be this lane here, barriers, and traffic would be able to flow straight this way. There is a loading zone here, but because of the curb area, traffic goes a little bit to the left here. You probably could still get a delivery in there should it be needed, because the tables would end here.
Okay.
I'll stop for a minute and ask.
I do have Stephen Bowler has his hand raised.
Hey, everybody. So just to comment on this, sounds like it's been a bit of a hot topic. First, there are 3 businesses that would potentially be impacted. I don't know if Amy over at the Beat has actually submitted an application, but the way it sort of worked out last year was that we let her have the back alley behind the buildings. as a result of us having, plenty of space in front of it. But I believe that would change this year should our space, be lowered or impacted. So I think that you could potentially see, if the street size gets lowered and we want to share some of that space, that there's a third local business that would be impacted by the street closure. Obviously not being an expert on safety, my only point in terms of the traffic would be simply that, cars can already sort of go from, they can use Oak Street to get from Southwater to Easy. They could drive past Main Street and take Salem to get back around on Easy Street. Having been a business owner here for 8 years in this location, I can certainly say that there isn't a tremendous amount of traffic that goes down this street. It's mostly, I'd say, people, circling around town looking for parking, not people directly trying to get to or from the boat. But beyond that, I think some of the conversation earlier tonight really should reinforce how important the outdoor dining is for Nantucket. We had a lot of talk on COVID about how the cases are rising, about how vaccines aren't going as quickly as they need to. And, we certainly think it's really important for us to have as much outdoor space as we can so we can have as many seats as possible. We sort of ran through the numbers last year and estimated that we were able to feed about 17,000 people safely outdoors from July 1st to the end of October. This year, if we went from 6 to 7 days and we were able to open earlier in April, I'm guessing with the same footprint we had last year, which I understand isn't necessarily on the table, assuming we aren't able to get permission from the apartment owner above Nalu. But if we had that same space, I think we could have fed something like 30,000 people there this year in 6 months. If we lose the space in front of Nalu and we cut the street in half, I think we're talking about going from 22 tables to 5 tables. I think that would be about 25,000 outdoor diners that we would lose over the course of the 6 months, who would all likely have to go eat inside somewhere, whether with us or somewhere else. So I think, just sort of pointing that out, that's really a tremendous number of people. And then just to dig into the financials a little, we're talking probably something like 7-figure loss for us in the change here, which between, the 7% income tax and the payroll tax that we would, not be paying for several of the staff members we'd have to let go is probably about six figures in terms of what the tax revenue that won't go to the state or the town that could otherwise go to help, local, other businesses or COVID or improving the vaccine or things of that nature, helping the community and stuff like that. So that's sort of where we stand. If there's any possibility to keep the street completely closed, I know Amy said that it's unlikely that we could close half the street for part of the day. I have seen that in and around Boston. They do have several places where they don't have the Jersey barriers, while there still are cars, going along the side. So it is something that has been done in other places, but, I wouldn't be an expert on exactly how to do that. But that's basically where we stand. We've been an on-island business for 8 years. We're open 46 weeks of the year. We're year round. Provide a place for people to eat, year round for those 8 years, and a job for people year round. And this is something that would severely impact our ability. Our indoor dining isn't, anybody who's been in there knows it's pretty small in there, so it's not a particularly COVID friendly place if we were to go indoors. So assuming we could get people to sit inside, our capacity in there with the COVID seating is probably something like 25. So if we only had the 5 tables outside, we're probably talking about having about 35 seats, whereas last year we had, about 65 or 70 seats, which, ultimately was probably about 10 more seats than we would have normally had, but it was not an increase in the capacity. In normal times, we would have been able to seat 60 and have about 10 or 12 people standing waiting for seats. And so the outdoors sort of mimicked that number of 72. Our capacity is 83 people. So thank you. Appreciate everybody. Amy, appreciate your work on this. And thanks to everybody on the select board for working hard on this.
Thank you. Are there board questions? Oh, we have Kenneth Gullickson has his hand up.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
All right. Kenneth Gullickson. I represent EM Mac Corporation, which owns the Nalu building. And I just wanted a couple of quick things. We're willing to accept the proposal as long as the seating is not in front of that building. The only thing I just wanted to be sure that the motion, which the way it's drafted does not incorporate the conditions. I think that's probably assumed, but I maybe want to make it part of the motion. It includes the conditions that are stated that Amy brought up. And I just also want to point out that the conditions talk about outdoor seating on sidewalks. They don't mention the street. Again, I think, it's assumed, but it should be maybe made clear that if the approval is made, it's the street as well as the sidewalk in front of Nautilus only. Thank you.
Amy?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to follow up on a couple things. One, the Beat's not a part of this. Beat, and they did not give Beat the alley behind the way. The owner of the building, who I spoke with directly about it, worked that out. So the Beat's not part of this, and they're going to do the tables right where they did last year, next to Jack Wills in that area, and that's a different owner. So that's what that is. And as Ken just mentioned, conditions, as we get to the vote, I will restate any conditions that came up through this before the vote so that we do cover that. And there wouldn't be any sidewalk seating, but I can certainly add that in the condition as well here as well. And then one other point here, and I spent the better part of the last year defending the space, certainly, and I certainly understand them wanting to have the full space here. But one thing he brought up was seating, which they had more seating than they normally would. People standing around, that's a different situation. So he just brought up that they had more seating than normal. The one thing in this whole thing that we can't replace is the number of people you have in there, 10 to 1, that it's just pure bar and alcohol. That's going to be a tough thing to replace. So the standing and all of that, as much as we'd like to do that, the space they did have was very generous last year. However, even with the smaller space, they still would be online with getting replacement of the tables that are lost. But the bar, that's going to be tough to do. So I think, it would be difficult, but if the police chief thinks that this would be better for public safety, I think that's what we would support.
Stephen Bowler?
Just wanted to sort of clarify so we understand, I understand the concern from a traffic point of view, but I'm not sure I totally understand what the if we public safety element is on that. And then just, Amy, to touch on it, I haven't talked to Amy Young at all about the Beat this year, but last year I was the one that negotiated for her on her behalf with all the owners at the Easy Street building. And we did, we had the ability to seat back there as well, and we forfeited that to Amy. So my point in this was that if we, are forced to go down to the 5 seats outside or less, that I would probably re-engage with the owners of that building to give us some of the space back there as well. Thank
you. Chief Pittman?
Thank you, Dawn. Our concern this year was brought about as a result of watching very carefully what was going on down in that area last year, because at the very beginning, we had some concerns that there would be traffic impacts from all of this, but in particular this location, because the place that's impacted the most is the intersection of Main and South Water and Main and Easy Street. There's a significant number of people that come into town, and I don't know if they're going to the boat or if they're circling looking for traffic, but there's a significant number of people that come into town down India Street and then to get down to Easy Street and go out that way to the boats. And it forces all that traffic to go up to Main, either at Water or Easy. And when you have the pedestrians that we have and the crossing situations that we have, it led to probably a majority of the big backups that we had last summer. And we had some fairly significant backups, even though by everybody's account, it was probably the best for traffic summer that we had, and parking issues downtown. But we fully expect that not to be the case this year. If the projections are accurate, I think we're going to have significant traffic problems downtown and significant problems with the movement of pedestrians. And all of that, every little bit can make a difference. And I understand the need for the tables and places for the people to go, but we got to be able to get people there too. And you know, our request is to leave a lane open by here so that it can relieve just that much traffic off of that Main Street intersections, which are really the crux of the problem with traffic movement downtown.
Stephen Bowler.
Just wanted to touch on one other thing and then comment on Chief Pittman's response as well. Amy, just when you pointed out, you know, our bar seats, you know, a bar is something different to everybody. In our restaurant, it's 100% a dining bar. The people that sit there have full dinners. Basically, every person that sits there has a full dinner. So those are seats the same as the tables are seats in our restaurant, 100%, no exceptions. So just wanted to point that out, that sort of separating the bar from the tables isn't particularly fair in our case. And then in terms of the traffic pattern, you know, I do totally get it and I am sympathetic to it. I would point out, obviously, though, that the people that come down to India can take a left on Federal and are able to get to the boat by going down Oak Street without needing this street. So it is, you know, I understand it would relieve in some ways, but it is superfluous in that you can go that way and you can go around. So there are two other ways to get there. So I would just ask that the board sort of weigh that in comparison to the numbers I put out there, that you might be talking about something like 20 or 25,000 people that we could feed outdoors safely, who will not have that opportunity and will have to eat indoors somewhere else, given all the notes that we heard earlier tonight regarding all the case issues and people sort of, you know, loosening up on their mask wearing and things like that. You know, putting them in this environment is an environment where our staff, having done this all last summer, is all well trained in terms of how to, you know, have people follow the guidelines, sit down, keep their masks on, not mingle with other tables. It's a very controllable environment, and I think it's something that I commend our staff for doing a really good job on last year.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, are you wanting us to discuss now or just listen, ask questions, and then we can all talk after the public hearing is closed?
Because of the way we're doing this, I think that you may as well weigh in now.
As in my opinion and what I think we should do, or should I wait?
Whatever you think is appropriate.
Well, it's kind of what Matt was saying earlier. Like, should I wait? He had some comments on the private property. It's the best way to handle this.
I think that if you have any questions or if you want to get other board members to make comments, now is the time, while the public can still say something as well.
Okay.
So I think that it's appropriate to make comments.
All right. So my thoughts on this, you know, it is a public safety issue. Traffic jams can put a strain on resources, and there's a potential for some, you know, negative public safety. So I do understand that, and I'm glad that, you know, the police department and chief were paying attention last year and seeing where the kind of where the log jams were, or some of the weaknesses of the outdoor dining, what we did. And that's what I said during it in this past winter. Like, what did we learn? We have to adapt from it. This is a tough one because you're going from 22 tables down to 14, possibly down to 5. It's a 77% drop in tables. And I think we have to try to do as much as we can to keep this at the 14 level, because we've done that work for everyone else. And I think I'm okay losing the, you know, no one's really talking about losing the parking spaces, which I'm okay with, right? It kind of forces people to find people who can and are able to find other ways to come downtown. And I think that that started last year. So I like that it's kind of starting again. So I'm disappointed that the abutters who own the other side of the building aren't going to allow that. But I get it. I think that's what we should do. I'm just kind of disappointed in it. So I like that the butters have to sign off. That's going to take a lot of issues away on Main Street and on Cambridge. But at this point, I'm for still closing it because it's still going to be shortened from 22 to 14 tables. And listening to Gary and Roberto today makes me think that we need to have as much outdoor dining as possible, as much outdoor activities as possible. And that has a better, I think, outcome, or at least I value that a little more, and I'll take the traffic jams a little bit, I guess, of getting people to stay outside, because there's going to be a lot of people coming here that maybe don't wear the mask and are compliant as we are. So let's get as many people as we can outside to protect everyone. The tax implications and the jobs and economy, I think we all get that, and it's obvious. So I think we're trying to weigh, the advantages and disadvantages here, and I'm slightly weighing towards keeping the street closed and keeping them at 14 tables versus the 22. That's already a pretty big loss. Thanks.
Thanks, Jason. Are there any other comments on this section? Matt Fay?
Yeah, just on this one, I'm with you, Jason. I'm a little torn on this, and I came out thinking, I came out thinking, geez, we should, sort of close. We should leave it closed as we did last year. But I'm sort of torn, and I wish there were a way to keep it open and have them have 14 seats, 14 tables along that street. I wish that to me would be the best solution. So again, I'm torn. I think that's, and I think we're going to be busier than last year. I think people they're already letting the guards down. They're going to let the guards down. So I think we should have more outside seating, but I'm torn on this. And then before we vote on it, I do want to say there's a couple in here that are customers, not very big customers. I'm just disclosing that. I feel comfortable voting. I'm not influenced by it. I'm not going to gain or lose any customers from it, but there's no personal gain, but it is necessary. There's only 3 of us. So I want to just make sure I disclose that before we get to any voting.
Thanks, Matt. I'm torn, as both of you are. I know that I raised it a few weeks ago when we talked about it, that I was a little bit worried about traffic backup. In the thought of whether we could leave a lane of traffic open, I did not anticipate the inability to extend in front of the retail on this street. And it would certainly be my preference to for them to have the same sort of width as they did last year. And as particularly because it's at night, I don't really see what the hindrance is to the retail business. I would hope that maybe we could work that out and see if we could leave a lane of traffic open. In the absence of that, I think that we have to close the street to allow this business to be successful and to provide this safe dining experiences to our residents and visitors. We do have some more public comments. Ryan Williams.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes,
Hi,
go
yes.
ahead, Ryan.
Ryan Williams, 40 Union Street. Obviously, this is a tough call. This restaurant's already losing seats as it is. This is another tough summer for everybody economically. I just don't see how you could force this restaurant to lose more seats. They've been, obviously a part of the community for a long time. They're in a very unique situation in relation to other restaurants that are basically getting what they had last year through no fault of their own. Obviously, there are public safety concerns. I think we get that. I don't think the street is, a main street. I don't know if there's some way to potentially mitigate traffic issues with better signage to direct tourists that might not be familiar with the streets, how they can get down to the ferries so they're not using the street or kind of turning. I think Mr. Bowler made a very compelling presentation about just, what impact this would have on his business. This could be, devastating for this business long term. And there are a lot of issues at play here, but I do think, look, this is one more summer of this. Hopefully we're, knock on wood, back to normal by next summer. But I just don't see how you could take them down to 5 seats and expect them to, be economically viable. It would be too much of an impact, in my opinion. And I hope the board considers that and considers, how well this restaurant has been for the island and is is just a kind of a staple of the community, and hope that's considered as this decision is made.
Thank you. Stephen Bowler.
Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate the nice words. And I just wanted to reiterate that we are definitely open to exploring the possibility that there is a way to have the street be partially open, say until 3:30 p.m. every day, so that traffic can pass down there, and then close it, for dinner service. Like I said, I don't know how that would work, but I do know that you wouldn't need to put, the Jersey barriers down the middle of the road if that was the case, because we don't serve lunch, so we wouldn't have people out there during the day. So I think what we'd really be talking about is just the blockage at the top of the road, that would sort of complete a full blockage versus a half blockage. So if there's some reasonable way that could be done on a daily basis, then obviously we're certainly amenable to that and would be, open to moving our chairs and tables back to half the road, at the end of our shift, and then sort of spreading back out in the afternoon. So, given the opinions on both sides, it seems like if there was, maybe we could postpone at least this one for another week or two to try to explore that possibility. I just throw that out there. And I also know that, I don't know if she's in here yet, but Courtney Miller, the owner of PPX, was trying to log in and speak about this issue as well.
Thank you. To extend any decisions, we would have to extend the entire public hearing over. I would really like to take some votes tonight so that people can start planning, and maybe there's a way to deal with this where we can leave some options open for this particular business. I think that this is the main point of contention, aside from some other decision points that the board needs to make about hours. Am I correct? Am I thinking on this, Amy?
Yes, Madam Chair. I think I just wanted to respond to the last comment that the decision on what kind of barriers are put down for safety is the fire chief and police chief's decision, not the restaurant. So if they deem that they need a Jersey barrier or something down there when people are sitting in the street, that will be their decision to make. And I believe that's the information I'm getting. So the partial or we don't serve lunch, we'll just do dinner thing, I don't think that's an option, but it would be partial versus full closure. On a lot of these, we're gonna have to work out the details as far as placement of barriers and such and the space. So that would be probably the decision, is if we are to pursue a partial or full closure on that.
Jason?
If there's, if the restaurant can incur the cost, even if there's some way to, keep it open until 3 or whatever it is, that would be a great solution to this. Even if the restaurant had to incur, I'm just making this up, Nautilus, I'm sorry, but like $20,000 to have somebody come in and move the Jersey barrier every single day, or I had to buy a piece of equipment, it would still be worth it for them to do something like that. And if they're open to it, then I would rather say to vote to keep it closed with the caveat of trying to find a way to do it, what we were just saying, if there is some kind of partial close open. But if there was a motion, that's what I would make on this one.
Okay. Courtney McKay.
Oh, hi, this is Courtney. I'm one of the owners of PPX Events located right next door to the Nautilus. And I'd first just like to echo what Ryan Williams and Steve have been advocating for, Stephen Bowler, this entire time. But I would also like to note that if this changes for the Nautilus, and this also affects us at PPX, we would go from being able to seat approximately 18 people down to 12, which would really make our outside space pretty useless. And obviously, given our relationship with the Nautilus, we're happy to share with them when we're not using the space and whatever else. But this doesn't just affect them. And I also would like to echo that Steve did put a lot of time into advocating for the beat last year and advocating for their usage of that backspace and for us as well. And I think that this closure is a bigger thing. The restaurants in general are, struggling already, and we're going to have more people on island, and to take away seats from such a busy restaurant. I understand the safety concerns, and I am 100% advocate of making things as safe as possible for everyone. But I think that, we just need to really look at the implications of what something like this has. And thank you for all of your time on this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Courtney. Chief Pittman?
Thank you, Dawn. I'm sitting here thinking about that issue of the closing it like at 4 o'clock or something and leaving it open during the day. That would significantly help. And it could be done rather than with Jersey barriers. It could be done with vehicles that are readily movable. I think we could work something out on that. If that was what the board was inclined to do, we could figure a way.
Matt?
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. I was thinking you might be able to move something pretty heavy with a pallet jack, some sort of pallet jack, and move it every day yourself. You get you could do something. Vehicles is a good idea. There's probably a way to do it if necessary.
Okay, that sounds like a potentially good plan. I'm not seeing any other public hands raised. Can we go back and can we close the public hearing and go back and go through the decision points, Amy?
Well, just to say we have a few more to go through.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, there's more.
Getting ahead of myself here. Keep going. Oh,
So-
Matt, sorry, before
Before we leave this one, just I guess a question for Amy. How many seats do these guys have? Both of these businesses have inside prior, and how many did they have after, with what we did last year, and how many would they have with it skinnied down? What do you have a ballpark?
Mm-hmm. Well, luckily they just sent me a nice little drawing, which I would bring up. I don't know if I can bring up if everyone wants to read my email here real quick. That they just sent over. So normally they would have 50 to 60 seats. This is a normal setup. They definitely at times, because some days, and they're saying they never went over it, but some days they had people sitting here as we got later into the summer. So it did definitely go over. So it's 50 to 60 seats. And then some days you have 22 tables, depending on how big they were. 4 2-seaters. I mean, it depends. I think they said 72 was their maximum of number of seats out there. And then, like I said, some days as we got later in and were allowed indoor, there were some people at the captain's table. So there were more. So that's why initially I thought even if we had to compromise and remove the 6, it's tough, but if we didn't have to have huge trees or whatever, they might still be able to get some in there. So
I think Steve Buller has a comment on that.
Sure.
Amy, if you just, that document I sent you has 4 pages that show kind of what we had last year, what it would be with a full street closure and what it would be with a partial street closure. You can kind of see the way it affects us.
Yeah. I don't mean to get, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Amy.
I don't mean to get into the weeds with this. I had just asked them offline. I said, let's not get into the occupancy limit thing because it was close. They were given a very generous space, and the frustration was saying we need to make some sort of compromise this year. Hopefully it won't be too bad, but just understand why we have to do that. So it's just a little bit frustrating here. And your occupancy is 80, not 83. So there was some different numbers here, and I don't want to get into those weeds. That's not the point. The point was saying that we are trying to be as generous as absolutely possible and still compromise with what we need to compromise with. So that's all. We don't need to get into a numbers war here at this point.
Thanks, Amy. Can we just try and go through the rest of?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yes, we will. Great. So I'll start now with, oh, you know what? Erica did say I passed by Gaslight, and I bet you I did. She was right. Sorry. Okay. The last street closure to talk about was North Union between Main and Cambridge Street, which was Gaslight Nantucket. It removed, I think, one 1 hour parking space and a 30-minute space in a loading zone. They are requesting, the one difference this year would be requesting decking for this area here in front of the restaurant for these tables. And then the compromise and what we did last year with the neighbors is to make sure that the closure was past this alley here, so deliveries could still go in, trucks making deliveries can still pull up here and go into the alley behind Murray's there. So we would request that that remain and that they be allowed decking. It would make it safer here. In this area as well. So it would be the same with the addition of decking. So I don't know if there's any comments on this space.
I'm not seeing any hands.
Okay. All right, we're gonna go now to sidewalk dining. Starting with Broad Street. We had these line of restaurants here, all had tables in front of their own restaurant here, being Languedoc, Dune, and After House on the south side. Graydon House as well on the other side had, I think, 2 tables there, 3 tables along the sidewalk here. We would request a similar, they had the stanchions here, we might have to put some here. I think the only thing we may have to do, depending on space, is either remove tables on this side or just pull some things back here to make sure that we have enough space going through here. But it'd be a similar request here. So that would be the only reduction based on how we set it up. So it may be fine so long as we get the 4 or 5 feet closure in here and this side here. So any comments on Broad Street?
Any questions or comments? I'm not seeing any.
Okay. Next street, Main Street. So we have a couple here to talk about. I included Backyard Barbecue. I guess I was assuming Lower Main, but that's Straight Wharf. But lower down here, they only had the small 2 tops along the side here, which was helpful since we have no trees here, that this lane was able to remain open. So they're requesting the same 2 as well. Again, Club Car, which has a space in the back, also had a few tables here. Again, just 2 tops along the front of the building with a wider sidewalk. That was fine here with the taxi lines more further up here. Over here we have Or the Whale, which does have a patio on the back, has some seating along the side here, and had a few tables here as well, with nothing on this side, which allowed the sidewalk to go into here. And then the 4th restaurant, which I'm gonna have to just go to a Google shot because it was the one restaurant that didn't send in a photo, is Lemon Press. And Lemon Press here is where I have to make a few comments as far as this space here. Unfortunately, I don't have the picture of those tables, but the main tables would be here, these garbage pails and seats removed. Where there might be some cleaning up of the spaces.
We're not seeing what you're seeing.
You're not?
No, we're still seeing the Club Car shot.
Oh, okay. And you know what? I probably didn't select that. Okay. So I don't know how I would have to do that. I'm going to do this again. Okay. How's that? We're good? So if we're at Lemon Press here, The question here is for them, and what I've requested is this has been an area that we had some issues with as far as neighbors and complaints and a congestion, because we have a lot of takeout business here, that we would request at minimum there would only be tables here, one lane. It can't be two-sided, it's just too crowded, and that we would need permission again from these abutters to have these benches and others removed. Benches, some of these businesses like having the benches in front, like having that space in front. So they would have to have written permission to extend. They extended further down last year. And that's where we had some complaints and some issues with congestion here. So I'll step back and.
Matt?
Yeah, was there any discussion about because they've sent us a letter this afternoon. Their landlord hasn't given them any relief. Their numbers are frightening, and so I feel for them. I wonder, could we move the garbage cans? We probably did, and could a couple spaces be removed so that they could seat in those spaces? Is that something we would consider? Have you guys talked about that?
Last year they did suggest, and I think there were some internal departments that didn't agree with having decking into Main Street. That space would need to be decked, and that, if you want to have that discussion or have that consideration, we can take a look at that. I think there were some safety concerns. We had a car go up on the sidewalk last year. So that's a concern too, as well. It would require decking out into this space. It's very uneven. It would absolutely require decking and some sort of barrier as well with all that traffic and parking. So, if that's something you want us to pursue, we can certainly pursue that. I think there was a lot of disagreement as far as that being a huge safety issue, and I would defer to any of the chiefs that wanted to comment on that. But
I have a hand raised from Daria Galt. Daria, go ahead, if you can hear me.
Can you hear me now? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Oh, okay, thank you so much. We did submit a plan this year for an AutoCAD drawn plan without the decking included and everything drawn out. So I might be misunderstanding. We did also propose a plan for 2 parking spaces or any kind of parking spaces to be under review, but I don't see that plan submitted here today, so I'm at a loss.
Amy?
yeah, I'll go back to, that was the same as last year. That was not suggested or not approved internally. It's something that would have to have been approved safety wise, whether between building and fire and such. So that was not put forward. If the board would like to have us consider that again, I'll put it back in. But that Main Street, it's gotten a lot of pushback on that, but if you'd like us to consider that, I'll put it back through.
I would like to see us work it out on the sidewalks. Stephen Murphy, and then Matt B.
Thanks, Madam Chair. As Amy stated, we did have a car that went up on the sidewalk. This is an area that's obviously sees lots of vehicle traffic. It's one of my major concerns. Anything that was into the parking spaces would have to have substantial protection for the patrons that were in that seated area. And we'd have to really look at that. So if there was any decking put in there outside of Jersey barriers, I don't know what else could really protect the people sitting at those tables from cars coming up and moving around. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
And I agree with Dawn. I would like to see it worked out so they could have it on one side of the sidewalk either direction. But with the, sort of, if they can't, then I think we should be considering it. A lot of this to me is a question of fairness. And we've sort of bent over backwards for some of the, some of these businesses. And I think, and not been, that's the wrong word. We've been very fair to some of these businesses, but I think we could, if they can't work out something next door, either side, then I would be willing to look at it.
Okay. Daria, did you have another comment? Daria? I think you're still muted.
I don't know why it automatically mutes me. I'm sorry. I'm not used to this yet. I did also say that in the email that we saw a lot of success with the way Rose and Crown did their sidewalks, and we're open to something like that. And obviously we'd use Jersey barriers and anything we needed to do to protect our patrons. But I'd really, it's a very big part of our business, and it's very hard to keep the lines in check for takeout, and we're doing everything we can. We've updated all of our software. We put a lot of money into the downtown, into just upgrading everything on the sidewalks, and to see this, to lose any tables outside would be pretty devastating for us, honestly. So I'd appreciate any kind of, anyone looking at anything we did would be great.
Amy?
I would just say that we're not actually suggesting losing tables, but it would be up to them. I had some complaints even from neighbors last year, but they would need to make sure that they're, working with their neighbors and not just moving benches and putting tables in, that they need to have that permission. So if they work with their neighbors and can go down, that's fine. We're just saying to allow for your takeout line to make sure you're not having tables and host stands on the other side as well. If we can reconfigure that so the tables are just on one side, it has to be unfortunately on that tree side, because pedestrians couldn't walk down that way. So we prefer it against the building. It's not possible in that location. We certainly, if they can work that out and folks are fine with that and we keep it along one lane there, okay. I don't think we're asking to reduce it, but just making sure that that's done properly this year and that they work with their neighbors as well.
Thank you, Amy, for the clarification. Jason, did you?
Yeah, I like what you said, Matt, about, trying to be fair. We've taken spaces from other areas. Main Street will be a little harder, I think, to get through, just the public, just the visuals. It's Main Street. But I think if we were to be able to get the same amount of tables on there, and it's 2 spaces and it opens up the sidewalk and makes it more accessible and creates, just makes, more space for people to stand and walk through. Just kind of going back to what Roberto and Gary were saying about this coming up year of trying to keep everybody outside and safe. My first thought was, before we started this conversation, was let's just try to work with the abutters and learn from last year and, make whatever it is a little cleaner or just organize it differently. But I would like to see if there is a possibility to keep it safe, to put it out there. I think it's worth maybe another look.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with that sentiment completely. I want these businesses to be successful and for us to be fair. I'm going to guess that the abutters will be more receptive to working out, having it in a reasonable fashion on the sidewalks rather than losing the parking in front of their businesses. So hopefully that will all be workable for everybody. Sarah Ellis has a comment. I know we received a letter from you as well. Sarah, can you hear me?
Hi, thank you for taking me. I incredibly appreciate the fact that COVID has affected our businesses. I do think that Main Street is a main thoroughfare, and both for driving and walking. The sidewalks are uneven. I know last year there were quite a few people who couldn't get through the crowds outside of Lemon Press. I think there's a suggestion that the management of the takeout line will be better. But my question is in regards to all of these requirements that you're proposing for these businesses, what does enforcement look like?
Go ahead, Amy.
Well, I mean, enforcement is as far as inspections. I mean, it's generally going to be the same, and probably obviously more with the COVID inspections and enforcement as it is normally for building inspections, fire, police, whatever, public safety. So, I mean, that's done generally on a regular basis. A lot of things were allowed last year. Maybe that would be tightened up this year because we got sprung a pandemic at the last minute. So I think we probably were a little bit more lenient on that. But we've learned more, and we're certainly trying to adhere to ADA and accessibility requirements and things of that sort. So we've had time to pull that together and try to establish it so we can still allow it and do it safely and with recommended guidelines. So, but enforcement it's pretty much every day is talking with these folks and going through what we see, and then the general inspections for the restaurants per their license.
Okay, and so one last question is,
sure.
In terms of real time, if someone is having a problem getting past the crowd, and I understand that there are these requirements regarding spacing of tables, which makes sense, but I don't really understand who's going to be managing the takeout crowd.
If I can respond, Madam Chair. So if you're talking about obviously the takeout line and the line queues, that's certainly they should be managing that, and we've been working with businesses, and hopefully that they have been pursuing other electronic options, electronic queues and things of that sort to help mitigate it. The more I get into the legal conversation, certainly people have the right to congregate on a sidewalk. If it becomes a public safety issue, then we need to take action there, but it certainly behooves the business to do so, and we're working with them, hopefully trying to get stanchions and other things to help be in orderly fashion and be consistent across streets. So we're working on that as well with some grant money to help with that and make it a little bit more uniform and helpful, so that a lane goes through easily and the tables are sectioned off. So it's hard because the sidewalks aren't as big as the city and that sort of thing. So we're working with kind of those guidelines as well, but hopefully that helps answer that.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm hopeful too.
Thanks.
Daria, do you have one more comment?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So last year, we're in very close contact with our neighbors, and I'm constantly getting emails, and anything that's brought up, we address right away, and we try to. So what we did, because of some of the complaints from our neighbors, was hire a person that we would text our clients to come and pick up their lunch or breakfast or takeout items. And that was their sole job, is to stand there, ask them to leave when they took their order, and basically come back when they got the text message. So what people do after they leave our premises, it's Main Street. So there are a lot of people that just congregate on Main Street and they hang out, and it's just a fun spot to hang out in. I don't think that there's much more we can do other than we have two new apps that we're trying to, we're going to see how it works. Our goal is to make it look better, make it look cleaner, and to push as many people away from the tables. And and our neighbors as possible. But there's some things that are just clearly out of our hands.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can we continue?
Yeah. Next is South Water Street, which is Rosencrown. Takes out about 3 to 4 spaces in front of there as well. I think in this location, a couple things. Again, we would ask for it, not to have two-sided here as well, having the tables on one side here. We did take out this parking here. Obviously, it's quite a busy corner with large trucks and other things coming around. So Jersey barrier goes down here at the end of the handicap parking space. And honestly, this was a reaction to initially when it was set up, people were afraid to walk into this area and they were walking into the street on their own. So we did that too as extra safety measure because people were just walking into the street. So that's why we did that. But I think we started to open it up a little bit more so people could freely flow into this area as well in front of the restaurant. So that would be my suggestion there, and keeping that space together as well and putting the barrier down there, same as we did last year. Any comments?
Not seeing any hands.
Okay.
Matt?
Well,
Now, this is right next to the juice bar. Are we going to be doing the same as we did last year in that situation?
Yeah, I think that's the plan. I wanted to get this behemoth kind of set. If we get all these guys set, and then we could start layering on everyone else. I've gotten a bunch of requests in from those folks as well. So as long as I get this set, then I kind of know what's where. But yeah, definitely. And I think they've worked on some technology solutions as well. So so that's great. And to Daria's point, yeah, the people are going to congregate. So that's why we want to try to keep to one lane with the tables so that we keep, one side and all these places open as well for people to pass through. So.
And that's great. I just wanted to make sure because I don't want to approve it for one business right next to another and then come back later and say, well, we can't do it for you because, we did it for them. I just, but I'm sure you thought about it. I'm just double checking. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like we said, the reason we did this first, this is a legal issue with the liquor licenses we had to do, and we'll certainly add everyone else in as we get through here. Okay, so that actually brings us, that's all the public spaces that we have. So if I may bring up the third topic of discussion is a discussion and establishing any sort of additional outdoor space conditions. The two that were brought up were, did the board wish to discuss any sort of closing hour specific only, and I'm only talking about the new outdoor spaces, expanded spaces, and additionally entertainment. So first subject being closure recommendations. I put just the basic recommendation based on what exists, elsewhere. Whatever the board would like to discuss, we can certainly do so. But a general setup that some places have are closing earlier on these outdoor spaces, weeknights 10 p.m. and weekends 11 p.m. And I'm saying if we do set a time that if we set a time that we have an additional half hour or so for customers to finish and be off the outdoor premises as well. And that if we do anything based on a weekend, our weekends are longer than most, and some will argue it's a 7-day weekend here in the summer. So take that into consideration. It would be tough for a lot of folks to close by 10 because of later reservations. So I think the general consensus obviously is, nothing before 11 for the restaurants, and later, if possible, midnight. And obviously closing hour for most is 1 a.m. So I'll take any comments or questions that you want to discuss.
Amy, I appreciated the recommendation. I would personally prefer to just see it be consistent all week at the 11 o'clock and cleared out by 11:30, but with any music stopping at 10. I just think I think we want to spread out the seatings. I think we want them to be able to take a 9 o'clock dinner reservation and not have them shoving the people out the door. Like, that's not the right experience. So that's my 2 cents on it. Jason?
I'm fine going to 12 with the caveat that we might have to go back to 11. If it ends up being 11, 11:30, it's fine, but I'm fine going 11:30 and 12 with the music off at 10. I like that. That's the sacrifice that the restaurants will have to make. You know, everyone's making sacrifices with parking spaces in this, and I think that's a good compromise.
Would you think maybe 11:30 with fully cleared out by midnight?
Yeah, I would.
Okay.
What was Don? What was the suggestion initially?
I was reading this the recommendation here.
So you said you wanted the same, and because
I didn't want them to close at 10. I thought that's too early.
I do too. I'm more on the 11, and if it's going well, then we loosen it up. I'm worried about going later and then trying to tighten it up. It never works. You know, then you're taking something away. I think, you know, so anyway, and by 11, you know, if people really are in drink mode, maybe maybe some other businesses will be opened and they'll go there, you know, places that really suffered last year. So, you know, I think I'd rather do that maybe.
Jason?
Yeah, you just going back to safety and with COVID and everything, I think 7 nights a week, 11, 11:30. And then if things get great and we have herd immunity and we're not seeing spikes, and then we could loosen it up. So I'm agreeing with you there, Matt.
Okay. Are there any public comments on this issue? Yes, Callie Keever.
Hi, Don and everyone. Thank you for taking my question. I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time. I'm not sure if entertainment is part of this closing and curfew discussion. I know at the beginning of this agenda packet it is. And so I was just looking for a little bit of clarification where it says the entertainment for the recommended outdoor spaces be allowed light background recorded music until 10, live music 1-day permit process allowed for live music requests based on existing state performance guidelines at the time of the request. So I was just seeking a little clarification on that, and feel free to interrupt me if now is not the time. But for the purposes, go ahead.
I think it is the time, and Amy can probably speak to that for you.
Great. I just, so assuming that for all of my questions and comments, I'm recognizing that we are following all COVID-19 sector specific guidelines for outdoor entertainment, because I'm very clear on what they are and I keep up with it regularly. So take that out of the equation and assume that we are aware of what those conditions are and we would be following them. I just wanted a little bit of clarification. So the way it's stated in the agenda tonight, I'm reading it as we would have to apply for a permit for every live music event we wanted to have on a daily basis. So in other words, we wouldn't be able to set up something regularly for Fridays or Saturdays. As we did last year, it would be like a one-off music performance, even for for solo or maybe 2 performers. So I wanted clarification on that point. And then I also was just hoping, I wanted to say that we've been previously licensed for live music on our patio before. So I just wanted to find a little clarification on that, because I know the patio space can blend into the outdoor space to the common person walking by. So I was just looking for a little bit of clarification on that. And then I guess my last question would be, if live music outdoors, if the restrictions were loosened at any point in the summer, is this something that we would be able to revisit? I think that covers all of my questions.
Thank you, Kelly. I think Amy can speak to all of those.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, entertainment was the next point I wanted to get to after closure, but it brought up a good point. 10 p.m. definitely would be light background music would be for the new outdoor spaces. And we are speaking tonight only about these new expanded spaces. Your current license is valid based on the current, I don't want to get into anyone's specific license, but based on the current performance guidelines. So if you have live entertainment, it's outdoors, singing is allowed. If you have 25 feet to give between the performer and your guests, that's fine. If you have a current license for that, those licenses are active once the guidelines allow for those types of things. Singing indoors right now, not recommended or not allowed. So things like that. So your current license is your current license. This license and this discussion is about the new outdoor premises only. So when we get to entertainment, the discussion is for the board, how they would like to handle that. If it's going to be a blanket, here's what's allowed for live music, for non-live music for these outdoor spaces only, or if we would prefer to have occasional requests for live music, which, some people like, some people don't want to see that too much. So it depends on how the board would like to visit that recommendation. And once they vote on that, I will certainly communicate what that process is if there's a new process. So as far as entertainment, what we're recommending, just based on past conversations, is that for now, we can certainly entertain an occasional, or however the board would like, a live music request, maybe on weekends, however they would like to do that, unless they would like to consider a blanket live music thing based on the current conditions. And yes, once things move forward, I have no idea how they will. We can't predict that, but once they do and change, absolutely, things will be revisited to make sure that we accommodate the current conditions. So I'll take it to the board as far as comments on entertainment and any comments they have on that.
Amy, so if we did what you're suggesting with the 1-day permit process, something like the Gaslight could say, we want these single-day permits, but for all of these dates through the season. So we're not saying, you can only have one. We're saying you just need to tell us which dates we're talking about, and maybe it's every Friday and Saturday night. We do have one other public question. Casey Weaver.
Hi, how you doing? It's actually John Keane from Creekwags in town.
Hi, John.
Hey guys, how are we all doing? And Madam Chairman, I really appreciate your point on that we need consistency and that 10 o'clock is too early. And Jason's point of a midnight close, as in the properties being clear, 11:30 last call. And the whole concept being, how do I describe this? We've been given these extra spaces, but the time frame's being crunched down so much where we have to overstaff, where, like, in order to clean a table between seatings takes 15 minutes. But the thing is, our customer bases are used to a certain thing. And last year we ran specifically on those times last year, and it worked very, very well. We made a sacrifice. We lost the 1 a.m. closure, but it worked. I've no issue about entertainment, but our customer basis has an expectation that they can get seated at 9:15 and have a meal. And with the timeframes that we're talking about of closing at 10 o'clock, 10:30, or even 11 o'clock, what happens if the person decides they want to have dessert and a cup of coffee, and the waiter has to tell them, well, you got to leave. They're going to leave disgruntled and unhappy. So basically, there's my 2 cents. Sorry. And thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, John. Are there any other public comments? Amy, does that conclude the items you need to go over with us?
Yes, it does. I'll just follow up real quick just to make sure that it was clarified that as far as closing hours and entertainment, that we were speaking of new expanded outdoor spaces only. The existing license are existing licenses. If there was any major closure time like we did last summer, that's Board of Health. That's a whole separate subject. So tonight is only our outdoor spaces. I just want to make sure
Only the new outdoor spaces.
Correct,
that we're
correct.
talking about.
The addition of these outdoor spaces are handled separately. The license and things of that sort are handled separately. So just to make sure that we're clear, that they would still have seating as of right now in their existing location, until their closing time on their license as of right now.
Man, Don, it's Matt. I was going to say the same thing. And also right now, I think there's a 90-minute, there used to be, maybe it's gone, but there was a 90-minute limit on tables too. So, so if you, so I think you could still be serving, still be serving after 11:30. You just can't be serving in the street after that time is what we're discussing.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. I'm not seeing any other hands raised. Are we comfortable if we close the public hearing? Okay, then we'll close the public hearing and go to some votes. Why don't we start with the private property? There is a potential vote in the packet, Amy.
Yep. So I'll just say prior to this that, again, similar to usual licensing situations, when you approve a liquor license and it has an occupancy and capacity, that is at the time of application, we'll go through with inspections and setup and report back as far as any, edits or changes or what the final license says. So there may be some edits from the properties based on inspections and such moving forward. But for private property, I believe we discussed here the conditions of such. I don't think anything was changed from this. And it would be effective immediately on private property, so long as we have approval from landowner, landlord, or the private property owner on record with their application.
Thank you, Jason.
Motion to approve as written there. I think private property is the easiest out of the whole bunch.
Yep, second.
Thank you, Matt. By roll call, Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. That carries unanimously.
Okay, so if we come to public streets and sidewalks, again, we have the listed conditions. I think we have several that we have comments on, being which, if I'm understanding correctly, and we'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, approving with recommendation to explore further on Cambridge Street and the Lemon Press location on Main Street as to further options. Would that be correct? And all other streets as well?
Well, can I just clarify? So what I wanted was to, on Cambridge Street, to close the road, and that's where you would start, but looking for another option to keep it open during the day. So as in like step one, step two, not start
The
at.
other thing I'd be interested in is maintaining the space in front of the retail establishments as an alternative to leave a better number of seats outside.
Madam Chair, does it make sense for us just to vote on everything except Cambridge and Main Street, and then we could take those separately? Or does it not work like that, Erica or Don? Versus having one big giant motion with all these
I
different.
would defer to town council who's on this meeting.
John Giorgio, what are your thoughts?
Good evening. I've been listening intently, I want you to know. I think you could do it either way, Madam Chair. If you wanted to, in essence, split the motion and vote the bulk of it in one vote, you could then go back and revisit. I think it was two different locations that Jason suggested. I think that would be fine.
Okay, let's go ahead and take a motion on all except those two.
Motion to approve as written in the motion in the packet.
A second?
Second.
All those in favor by roll call, Matt Fee, Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. Carries unanimously. Now let's take Cambridge Street. So, Jason, were you making a motion to close the street, but to allow a potential alteration if other options are available?
Yes, that's my motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor by roll call, Matt Fee,
Aye.
Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. That carries unanimously. And then
Chair, I want to just kind of double check on, there was a suggestion to put the abutters approval into the motion. Is that somewhere in the restrictions already, Amy?
Amy?
So are you asking this specific abutter approval?
Just in general, for all the.
Yes, yeah, and then that's included, yes, that they would, that is a requirement, yes, in writing.
Good, thank you.
Right.
Now for Lemon Press.
So for Lemon Press, would it be to, it would be approved as presented on the sidewalk, but to pursue the extension into the street if possible, and to report back on that plan. Is that correct? That you would like us to pursue if that is a possibility even further with town departments?
Is it also kind of if it's needed because they can't maintain enough tables on the sidewalk where like they were last year? Does that make sense?
Right.
Yeah, and I agree. If the neighbors are not willing to allow them to do it, then I think we should consider, closing some of those parking spaces.
Okay.
So moved, Matt?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call, Matt Fee,
Aye.
Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. Okay, and then next, it's hours. So, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to make a motion for 7 days a week to close at 11, with everyone out of the premises by 11:30.
And this is limited to the newly acquired public spaces, essentially.
Yes, with the idea of trying to get it to 12 if all things go well.
Okay, so we can revisit it as things progress. Is that?
I think that's reasonable. I'll accept that. Second it.
All those in favor by roll call, Matt Fee,
Aye.
Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. Look at how unanimous we are tonight. And entertainment. It was the final vote that we need. Background music till 10, and this is again just for the newly acquired spaces. It doesn't impact their previous and existing licenses. Is there a motion?
I'll move approval.
Is there a second?
I'll second with, I feel like I need to understand it a little more, but maybe we have to bring it back in a month or 6 weeks because maybe things will change. I don't know, but I'll second it for now. So, sorry, Madam Chair, Amy.
Okay, well, are we talking about maybe the 1 day permits? Is that what you're?
I just think in general, yeah.
Okay. Amy, can I just go to a vote? Okay. All those in favor by roll call, Matt Fee,
Aye.
Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. Thank you. Okay, so we are at 8 o'clock. We've concluded this item of our agenda. We're going to make a couple changes to the agenda to move some things till next week. We're going to skip to over the Jetties concession. We'll revisit that next Wednesday, and we will go straight to the Hunting Association. I know there's a lot of people that have tuned in for this tonight, and we will also defer our discussion on the town meeting warrant articles till next week. On the Hunting Association, I'm going to let Steve Holgate speak, I believe.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Steve. If you could let us know kind of where you're at and what your request is.
Yes, my request is to renew an existing lease we've had for, well, technically a 10-year term. There was a 10-year term started prior to that was reinstated, rewritten. So we've in theory had the lease for 13 years, I believe. Due to opposition, appealing some of our permitting, we ended up in court litigating that, which took many years. We put a stop on some of our last minute permitting until that litigation was resolved, which it wasn't. Now we've resumed with the last permit we need before we can break ground, which is the endangered species permit through the state, which the town should have received a draft of that hopefully today. If not, it'll be probably tomorrow. But in the meantime, the lease has run out, and we would like the opportunity to continue this project that we've strived so hard to give the community. We think a shooting range, a formal shooting range that's clean and safe for Nantucket is desperately needed. There's no place on Nantucket to shoot currently without just going out in the moors, setting up your own targets. And that's been practiced in the past. It may still continue now. And we think it would help the island if everybody was at the same place. And a facility that was built to be safe and to be more environmentally friendly. And so that's where we are. The board was given a lot of documentation to show the past, past history. And that's basically it. I'm obviously available for any questions the board may have.
Thank you, Steve. John Giorgio, I think, was going to give us a little bit of background on this.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So this is actually a little bit complicated and technical, so I apologize in advance. But back in 2004, town meeting authorized a lease of the property, but the vote did not specify any term of years. Under the town code, the select board has the authority to enter into leases for up to 5 years, and any period of time beyond 5 years requires approval at town meeting. So after that vote back in 1990, the town issued an RFP because the lease of property, of town property, if the value over the term of the lease, and that is the fair market value, exceeds $35,000, you have to issue an RFP. And the town did that. In that RFP, it stated it would be for a 10-year term, but it could be extended up to 25 years with a vote of the annual town meeting. Now, that never happened. It never went back to town meeting to authorize that extension period. So the way I look at this now, the lease is expiring this month. The select board could, in your discretion, agree to consider an extension of 5 years without a town meeting vote. But you would have to issue an RFP in order to comply with Chapter 30B. The 5-year, so the process would be you issue an RFP. It's for a term of 5 years. We can say in the RFP and the lease that it can be extended beyond 5 years with a vote of town meeting authorizing a longer term. So it's probably going to take a month or two in order to do the RFP, but that certainly is doable. And then you could consider at the next annual town meeting, which of course would be a year from now, to consider an extension beyond the 5 years.
Thank you, John. Board questions, Jason?
Thank you, John. Thank you, Madam Chair. I think whether it's 5 years or 2 years, I think it makes sense to issue a lease for 2 years or 5, just to get us to town meeting in 2022, and then bring it to the voters, because a lot has changed. People view shooting parks differently. But 2004 was my very first town meeting I went to, and I was it was unanimous. Like there was a ton of support for this. It was a lot of people stood up and talked, but it was very well supported. So my position is to kind of continue down that road. I understand that the people behind the shooting park are not going to build anything if there's not a long-term lease, right? So there's got to be something long-term. But I think we need to go not back to the drawing board, but we need to have more conversation of what it looks like, have people understand it. We can do that from now until town meeting of 2022. So I think we at least need to extend the lease for 2 years, if not 5, just to get to town meeting of 2022. If we think we can have all stakeholders input, talk to Mr. Holgate and everybody who just to understand what they want to build, what does the select board want as we're trying to consider all the different environmental and noise and safety and all those different issues. So that's kind of where where I'm at right now, but I'm curious to hear what everybody else has to say.
Thank you, Jason. I do have Janine Randolph has her hand up. Melissa, did you want to? Okay, I'll go to Janine and I'll come back to you, Melissa. Janine, I know you've been waiting patiently.
Wow. Okay. Give you guys medals. You have the patience of a saint and you do this regularly. Okay. So I'm going to throw out an idea for an alternative use of the land. So I'm going to read you the letter that I wrote. It's going to be, I'm trying to be respectful of everyone. So my goal is simple: to inspire you to envision a different use for the land by asking the gun range to do an indoor range and or postponing your decision so a business plan can be provided for a more varied use, such as a health and wellness campus. This is in the spirit of trying to serve the interest of many by moving beyond mere entertainment, by lending support to include health and wellness, not just general health and wellness, but specifically 2 pillars that the island desperately needs: mental health and social health. These 27 acres of pristine land have been the subject of division and controversy since 1999. For more than 20 years, by focusing on entertainment in the form of a golf course, which was proposed before, or gun range, and the needs of a select group. The idea is to expand the vision of what can be done, modeled after successful efforts in Martha's Vineyard and Vail, Colorado. We'd like the opportunity to propose an integrated approach to social and mental health and wellness issues for a diverse population of residents. This can take many forms, but imagine a new senior center that could be co-located near a new mental health center, and AA meetings could be held in the building next door to a gym with subsidized membership for year-round residents. Or a victims of violence shelter could be co-located with the food bank. Combining in-person social resources and clinical care with telehealth, which you know is very new, for expanded access to specialists help solve the challenge of recruiting and maintaining health professionals on the island. Finally, access to safe and affordable housing has become a clear need for island residents. Repurposing a portion of this land in this way could contribute to a major social deterrent of health by allowing for additional affordable housing development. If the land is used in creative ways that preserve the native habitat, the natural beauty and serenity of the island, with amenities such as parking, pedestrian walkways, and building designed in the quintessential Nantucket style, using the latest green technologies and handicap innovations, a master plan could attract partnerships from private citizens and funding sources from around the world. The COVID pandemic has brought to light the need to support all of our residents. Social and mental health, suicides and substance abuse are on the rise. The goal is to integrate child care, social health, mental health, senior health, women's health, and overall wellness on one campus to share resources and help address and solve challenges that have plagued the island, divided services, and resulted in competition for limited resources and fundings for decades. Let's look forward, not backwards. Let's serve many, not few. Let's unite and not divide by embracing a plan that includes a combination of resources for mental and social health of Nantucket residents in partnership with a proven model of success. That's my idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Melissa?
Thank you so much, Dawn. I guess I have a question for council, and maybe you said this, John, and I missed it, but if we extend this and then bring something back to town meeting, is what we would propose to town meeting a long-term lease? Because if I'm Steve in the Hunting Association, I'm not really going to want to make investments on land that I'm going to have to do an RFP for every 5 years. So what are our options for giving them a long-term lease where they can build something, or at least the community can have the conversation about building something that's long-term?
Yes, so if that's your goal, my recommendation would be that the board vote to issue an RFP now. And the RFP would say it's for a term of, it could be 2 years, 3 years, whatever you wanted. It can't be more than 5, but it would contain a provision that said, upon approval by town meeting, the lease will be automatically extended for a term of, and that's what we have to decide. You know, we would certainly want to seek input, but you're absolutely right, Melissa. If someone is going to be investing money in this and developing this site, they probably are going to want a lease for, I'm going to guess, 20 years. And so you would need, but you would go back to town meeting next year, authorize a 20-year lease, and then they would be good to go.
Do we think that 20 years is even realistic if it were to be an actual indoor facility that got built? I mean, the cost of construction has gone through the roof.
Well, that's the typical standard that, you know, I get, the question is, can you amortize the costs over 20 years, or do they need a longer term than that? Mm-hmm. And that's up to you all.
That extension built in if it were to come to that. Is that?
Yes, but they're going to want the certainty that the lease is going to be long enough so that they can amortize their investment over that period of time.
Yeah, and if we're asking for more stuff to be brought indoors, I would think they might need longer, but that's
right.
That's still, we can talk about the 2 to 5 years, and then that would be part of a much broader discussion that would be a town meeting vote. Matt? Oh, Matt, you're muted.
Yeah, a question for John. Does this open up, if we start this process again, an RFP process, does that open up litigation all over again? You know, some of the main opponents last time are no longer, have sold their houses and no longer there, but are we going to open the process all over again?
Matt, I don't think it would affect the status of the permits that have already been issued and litigated. That's totally separate. If the board were to sign a new lease, all the more reason to make sure that we're dotting all of our I's and crossing our T's so that it would withstand a potential legal challenge. And that's why I'm saying you need to issue an RFP and you need to go back to town meeting with it and get town meeting to authorize the term, whether it's 20, 25, or 30 years. So that's why it's very important, and I'm sure Steve would agree with this, that we want to make sure this is an unassailable process and that we follow the letter of the law.
Right. All right.
That answer. Oh, go ahead, Matt.
Follow up. Yeah. So that that leads, and I think, you know, I think that's great because we need to make sure, you know, that it doesn't go 10 more years. It may be, and I spoke with Steve, and this is, you know, a number of years ago now, and I spoke with some of the neighbors that were there. They really were pushing for indoor and would like, and some of them would have funded it. I think they offered 100,000, but I think they would have gone higher. You know, I think that that's kind of what we're hearing now. It's kind of, you know, the ecology is what the letter we received from the land council is talking about. So there's a couple of things that are going to become issues if and when this happens. And the strategy, you know, if I run the hunting board, my strategy would be to fundraise and get it indoors now, and, you know, and have some land reserved for some of the outdoor activities, and be a good neighbor for a number of years, and then slowly add those in. I think if the outdoor activities are the first thing out of the gate, I think we may be in this sort of this back and forth still. So that would be my, you know, my sort of my strategy were I in your shoes, Steve. You know, I think it's needed. You know, I think we want to, you know, I think we want to have gun safety, and we want to have a facility to do that. But I think it has to be very clear. We're going to have to re-educate we're going to have to re-educate the voters and everybody all over again, because it's been so long. And reading through these documents, you know, some of this was Catherine Stover, and, you know, it made me sad. I miss Catherine, and I look back, and it's been that long, and I miss her telling me I'm wrong when I'm wrong. And so, you know, so anyway, there's some points we have to do. We've got to do this right.
Thanks, Matt. Steve, I'll let you respond to that, and then I have some public hands raised.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to express concern that this going back in having a requirement to start with an indoor range, that is like starting over again. We're going all the way back, having to do a new town meeting. We're going to have to go back to the planning board with a whole nother set of plans. And this is just nothing but another big delay after going through this for 17 years. We may see a lot of enthusiasm drop. It's safe, you know, if this is getting a little bit too much, and that's my fear. We might have some people that are willing and able to donate a lot of money, but until I see that money, it's not guaranteed money. So that's my fear, is that this just prolongs it once more again. And the permitting we've got going on right now, I'd love to continue going on with it. Even if the board could extend the current lease, that would be great. We could at least get through the permitting and then address this other longer term lease. And we don't object to going indoors. We would prefer to have an indoor range. It's just, you know, very costly to do that. And if we could get the thing up and running with an outdoor range, and the money's coming in, and we got donors, and start building an indoor range, go back to the planning board and amend the current permit, that would be, you know, we would be non-objecting to that at all. So just wanted to make sure the board understands those concerns.
Thank you. I'm going to go to the hands that are raised. Deborah Soffin.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak. As a pediatrician with firsthand experience caring for children suffering from lead exposure, despite best practices, lead contamination can still likely occur based on experiences of other communities in close proximity to outdoor ranges. Lead dust can still be airborne, contaminating the air we breathe and leading to lead contamination of the soil in the surrounding areas. This is especially concerning as lead permeates sandy soil more readily, which could result in contamination of surrounding wells and even perhaps Nantucket's precious aquifer water source. As a healthcare professional, I would caution that once a person is exposed to lead, especially a child or pregnant woman, it is devastating. I do appreciate the desire for a proper safe site for training purposes of Nantucket's police and other security professionals, as well as the Nantucket Hunting Association's desire for a proper recreational shooting park. As a reasonable compromise, and I would like to stress the word compromise, I implore the select board once again to consider leasing a smaller portion of this town land to the NHA for a state-of-the-art indoor range. This would eliminate any risk of lead contamination to our sensitive ecosystem, as well as other concerns raised over the years, most notably noise pollution, which, if anyone has ever spent time near an outdoor shooting range, knows that despite reasonable noise mitigation, sound still amplifies and travels far distances. There are many who cherish the peace and quiet of Nantucket and have reasonable concern that an outdoor range will result in a significant and far-reaching noise disturbance. Moreover, an indoor range would require a much smaller footprint, freeing preciously rare town land for other much-needed purposes that could serve the greater community at large. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Libby, could you speak to the lead, and then John Giorgio?
Yeah, I was going to actually turn that over to John. I believe there is a requirement in the existing lease that prohibits the use of lead. Correct, John?
So yes, Exhibit C to the existing lease, under trap range restrictions, it says that only steel or other lead alternative non-corrosive shot may be used. And I have a question, I guess, for Steve. Does that mean that there would be no lead used on the range at all?
Through you, Madam Chair, that refers to the trap range only, with a shotgun would be shooting at the clay pigeons being thrown in the air with a machine. That's non-toxic shot being utilized there. At the pistol and rifle ranges, where there's the 20-foot back berm,
yep,
there is a lead mitigating backstop with liners, and lime is added, and a roof is put over top of the target zone so that it keeps rainwater from continuously deluging the bullets that are in the earth. And then you mine the lead out like every 2 years, or depending on how much shooting activity takes place. They have experts and consultants that we would hire to come out and decide when it's time to mine that lead out of that backdrop, that 20-foot back berm. So there is still lead used on the pistol and rifle ranges.
So we could include in the lease, which would be part of the RFP process, make sure that those kinds of best management practices would be a requirement of the lease.
And some of those may be requirements already in the planning board's conditions.
Yeah.
In the permit.
And Madam Chair, if I may, there's one other issue that I just want to put on everyone's radar screen. If you're talking about building an indoor shooting range, that's going to be in a building. And that's going to raise some significant public construction issues that we will have to work through. So that is going to complicate the process and most likely increase the cost of construction.
I have some more public hands raised. Kathleen Matthews.
Hi, my name is Kathleen Matthews, and I am a neighbor of both Janine Randolph and also Deborah Soffin. I live at 20 New South Road, right in the vicinity of where the proposed gun range will be. Even last week, I could hear guns shooting in that neighborhood because for the 17 years that we've been in the neighborhood, we've heard what I guess is illegal shooting in the area. So we certainly hear the noise from our home. But I want to thank the members of the select board and also Libby, Erica, and Maureen, who've really been very generous with their time taking calls from the neighbors to discuss the lease of the town land for the gun range, and also meeting with us in person last summer and over the fall. And I'm also grateful to council for your clarification that a long-term lease would have to go to town meeting, and that an RFP process is the appropriate way of pursuing this. And I want to reinforce what Janine and Deborah said. While as neighbors, we don't oppose the shooting range per se, because we think police and hunters, need a place where they can practice shooting. We believe an outdoor lease at the location that's proposed at New South Road near Matacasham Valley really does present a health and safety risk to a number of people. There are lots of hikers in that area, I'm among them, who hike on that newly cleared Nantucket Conservation Foundation land on the abutting Nantucket Land Bank property. There are bikers, the children who, are with Strong Wings every summer, who go down those roads daily to enjoy those beaches. You have, since this lease was first given, you have the nearby gas tanks with Yates Gas. And all of these to us seem like real safety and health hazards, including potentially the use of lead bullets. And we know from some testing in that area that there is lead already from the illegal shooting that's going into the ground nearby. We do think that this could be averted with an indoor range. And we also think that an indoor range would take a smaller footprint, and the broader acreage could have benefits beyond the shooting range. So what we would hope is that you would consider a very short-term lease to allow the town meeting to reconsider this. As Matt mentioned, there's a very, or I guess it was Jason who mentioned, there's a very different political climate, I think, around this now, but also the prioritization of issues like social services and mental health services that you talk about, all the time at your town meeting. So what we would like to see is a short-term consideration of maybe extending that lease till the next town meeting. And beyond that, allowing other people on the island, other interests to maybe propose some alternative use for that space that might actually coexist with an indoor range. We believe as neighbors, we can help the Nantucket Hunting Association raise money for that indoor range. We're very motivated. We have people who've already offered to do that. So we would like to partner with NHA as opposed to continuing this long-term battle with NHA over this space. And thank you very much for considering this. And I also have to say thank you so much for making Nantucket safe through this COVID crisis, for all you've done, not only monitoring the COVID epidemic with the hospital, but also the kind of precautions we just saw you going through with outdoor dining. We really appreciate all your service.
Thank you. Holly McGowan.
Hi. Good evening. I am in favor of what Janine Randolph stated. I think that it's a really good opportunity for multi-purpose use of this land. It's quite a large parcel, and an indoor range seems to be a really good use of being able to have the recreation, also keep everybody safe, keep the noise levels down. It just seems like a win-all if we can have that building and firing range contained, and then allow for other activities with some other use of the land. And, we all know that we've been talking about behavioral health and addressing it in a significant way for years and years on this island. And things have only, escalated, I think. The population has escalated, the needs have escalated, and we can't just keep ignoring the mental health and behavioral health of our residents here and our summer population. So I think it's really important that we not just turn a deaf ear to some other considerations, recreational and mental health considerations. So I hope that you would take that thought into your minds when you're going over this again, because it's been a long time and the timing might be right for some alternative purposes as well. Thank you very much.
I just wanted to make one quick comment on this. I mean, talking about a human services, mental health kind of community facility isn't really on our agenda tonight, but I think it is a very worthy conversation for us to be having, regardless of where maybe the best location is. And I would definitely be looking to the people suggesting this and the leaders in those professions to please bring forth some more details on a proposal for us to figure out how the town can play a part. Ben Thrustad?
Good evening, Madam Chair and the Select Board. Would like to, just mention briefly, because Janine and Holly and others have already covered some of this, but our concern is with the youth and, the problems that they've been having with lack of places for them to go. I think that the indoor range, and the expertise that would be there to be able to share a parcel of land that it seems to be, a significant amount of acreage. We have a land shortage. I don't know if the town has other spots, but to be able to accommodate some of our needs for the common good for the whole community, to be able to work some things together would be something that I would be really interested in pursuing. And this is looking at this as sort of an opportune time when we're discussing this large parcel. But it would be something absolutely to be, we would hope to be on the agenda, to be really highlighted so that there are many agencies that are here that have been involved that would like a discussion, but we really have been discussing things for a while. And as the NHA has been doing too, it's been going on and on. So if we can have this open discussion, we do have a crucial need for health and wellness and for activities. And it would be really good for to have a cohesive plan to be able to put something together. And thank you very much for listening to us tonight.
Thank you. I really appreciate everyone's enthusiasm on trying to put something together for the good of our community. And I think it's definitely a worthy conversation. It's not exactly what's before us this evening. And I very much welcome further proposals on how to accommodate what's being suggested, how to make it work financially, management. I mean, I'm very, very much for the community benefit that could be realized. Melissa?
Thank you, Dawn. And I echo your sentiments. I look forward to a substantive conversation when it's appropriate to have one about a new mental health facility. I just wanted to go back to what John mentioned about what some of the considerations would be on building an indoor facility. I think we've started to go down the track in this conversation tonight that's a possibility or sort of an easy solution. But what I heard from John is that it actually may not be an easy solution. And so where I'm deliberating in my mind tonight is in this renewal of issuing the RFP. Is there a requirement that it be indoor, or can we allow what Steve suggested, outdoor activity. And if that's successful and the funding comes in, move towards an indoor facility, somewhat the other way. But John, could you explain to us a little bit more detail what some of those challenges would be to an indoor facility?
Can I just quickly raise one point to you, Melissa, that I don't know
Sure.
if you're aware of, is
Sure.
a component of this is which, you know, it's whether that changes or not over time, is the skeet shooting, which
Okay.
cannot be done indoors.
Right.
Just that
Okay.
is something that is part of this right now. But I'll
Okay.
turn it over to John.
Yeah, thank you.
So I think, Melissa, the way I would answer that is I think that if you wind up with a long-term lease, you know, we could certainly put in a provision that allowed for the possibility of sometime in the future constructing an indoor facility. But that would, as I said, would raise some, I think significant issues under the public construction laws, because in essence, and I don't want to bore you with the details, but the town would be entering into a contract for the construction of a building. That's the way.
Right.
That's the way.
Because it's our land, not
exactly
somebody else's.
Exactly.
Okay.
If you're talking about installing an outdoor shooting range with, obviously there would be some facilities put in, but it would be pretty easy to require that at the conclusion of the lease, the tenant would have to remove all of that from the town land and restore the land to the condition it was in prior to the lease. That's pretty easy. If you're talking about a building, it becomes much more complicated. I'm not saying it can't be done, but what I am saying, it would definitely increase the cost of this project.
Thank you, John.
And it would also, I tend to agree with Steve that, that's not the permits that have been issued. So you would, I don't know if you go back to square one, but you would have to redo some of the permitting that's already taken place.
Thank you. And Don, if I could just have one more follow-up with you. I'm just curious where this discussion is heading tonight, what our options would be and what we would be considering making motions on.
I think the main thing before us right now is a short-term extension on the lease. It is due to expire. And there's obviously was a town meeting vote to allow this facility to take this land. And in my mind, we have some obligation to fulfill what town meeting voted, but there's a real lack of clarification, which I think will need to get brought back to town meeting. And that's where more of the broader discussion points would take place in terms of what proposal exactly goes before the town meeting. Does that make sense? So, I mean, I think that Jason was maybe getting to the point where maybe he wanted to make a motion for a 2-year extension. We do still have a couple more hands raised. So why don't I go to those, and I'll take who has their hands up now, and then we'll go back to the board. Holly McGowan.
Sorry, I didn't mean to have my hand up.
Oh, okay, thank you, Holly. David Bold, we haven't heard from you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening. I just want to thank you for the opportunity to speak. I want to offer my support for the Hunting Association in trying to build the park. I wanted to comment on the thought of an indoor range. While that does provide a smaller footprint on the property, I think Chairwoman Holgate, you pointed out that it precludes the ability to have a trap field. That's not possible with an indoor range, nor is the distance that you would typically practice with a rifle practical with an indoor range. And just to finish off on the indoor range, I've been to a lot throughout the country, and a proper indoor range is an extremely expensive endeavor to build and even more expensive to maintain. So an indoor range, while sounds great, and I would love an indoor range, it's a very financially expensive endeavor. The last thing I wanted to comment on is that, you know, there's been some comments about the land could be used for the good of the community. And I wanted to point out that there are a lot of Nantucket residents who are gun owners and shooters who would benefit from this. It's not a small number of people. There's a large community on this island that are hunters and shooters that would benefit from this. And I wanted to also mention that even non-shooters benefit from this, this park, because as it is right now, I think it was mentioned before, people who want to practice shooting are basically left to their own devices to find just an open spot anywhere on the island and do the best that they can with whatever they have and wherever they are, versus a dedicated shooting park that's purpose-built for this and provides safety and purpose-built facility for it. It removes the incentive for people to go find somewhere else on the island, and kind of concentrates it into this purpose-built, fenced-in, best management practice to mitigate lead. Like there's so much good that comes from this for the shooting community, but for the community at large, that I can't stress enough to the board to offer my support for the endeavor. And you know, the short-term lease, if that's what needs to happen to keep the project going, and then at the town meeting to, you know, offer the longest lease possible. I think the town would really benefit from that. And thank you for hearing my comments.
Thank you, David. Steve, you had a final
Yeah, just to
comment?
clarify or give the board an idea of what the 2004 town meeting vote, I did present, I believe, a sample site plan at that time for the voters to see. And it was, we actually had, if I can remember right, about 46 acres out there that was approved by the town vote. And it included a 200-yard rifle range, a 100-yard rifle range, a 50-yard rifle range, a 25-yard pistol range. It included archery, included a skeet field, which was bigger than the trap field we're currently proposing. And we gave all that up and working with the town and others to help develop the industrial park that's there now. So I think the voters were fully aware of what the intent of that, you know, what they were approving at that point. And also the clarification on building an indoor range would be a smaller footprint. Well, not really. If you still want to keep the same facility that's proposed now, it's a 100-yard range, a 50-yard range, and a 25-yard range. Those distances don't change. So those distances would have to be enclosed unless we are forced to go down to a small 25-foot range, which some people that see on TV an indoor range, what it looks like, that is a small 25-yard range typically. It would take away the ability for a lot of people to practice shooting other disciplines, other competitions, hunters sighting in their hunting rifles, etc. So that it's not clean and simple. It's not a simple reduced footprint. And then one more comment is to remind the board that it's under MISA or MIPA requirements out there. We have to mitigate for endangered species, which requires usually a 2-to-1. You can only develop on a third of the land. So there's 27 acres that we've reduced our 46 acres down to 27 acres. We can only build on 9. So to share the site with a wellness center or something, it's not that easy. There's not enough space there to mitigate for endangered species at the same time. So that was it. I was just wanted to clarify those points.
Thank you, Steve. John Giorgio.
Yes, Madam Chair. I have a question for Steve that might inform the vote of the select board. Steve, the lease is going to expire. I think it's April 21st or thereabouts. Is there any need for the Hunting Association to continue with the lease if we put it off till next year when we had the town meeting vote authorizing a long-term lease? Do you need access to that property in the interim?
Yes, because we're getting very close to breaking ground, and if we can keep the momentum going with the permitting, once we receive the endangered species permit, which could be say in 90 days, we could break ground. We could start brush clearing the perimeter, the developed areas, and putting permanent fencing up. And that was our goal, was to keep this moving forward and break ground.
Would you invest that money even if you didn't have if you hadn't secured the town meeting vote for a long-term lease?
I think the initial stages of construction, we have enough people that have volunteered and pledged their time and materials and some money pledges that I think we could do the stage one, at least getting it cleared, fencing put in, would get us a long ways. And obviously with just to see the support that hopefully would follow, would encourage us to continue.
Thank you.
Okay. I see that there are some more hands raised, but I had said already that I was only taking the remaining hands that were up at that time, and we're going to wrap up the board discussion now. Matt?
Where is the nearest skeet shooting range to us on the island?
Was that to me, Matt?
Yeah, please, Steve, sorry.
Yes, Steve,
Yes,
could you answer
through you,
that?
Madam Chairman. There is none on the island. You have to go to the mainland. And,
I think he meant, that's what he meant. Where's the
I
closest?
understand that, but we're on the mainland. If you were going to go skeet shooting, where would you go to? Can you go to Cape Cod? Do you go to Barnstable or the Cape, or where? Who has it?
I believe Cape Cod. I haven't gone to any myself right on Cape Cod, but I believe there is maybe Bass River Gun Club may have that's Trapper Skeet. A lot of those you have to join to be a member, like a private rod and gun club. They're not open for the community. You have to join, become a member.
Thank you. Jason, did you have Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, my other comment is, I think, I know that it would be difficult to build indoor. I know that that's difficult. What I'm trying to do is find a way to align the interests so this doesn't drag on for another 10 or 15 years. So, that's what I would hope to see. And I'm concerned that whatever we do it is going to be challenged, is going to be challengeable and challenged. And, if we redo it at a different town meeting and the wording is different, or people have something to hang their hat on, this will continue. So that was why I was making the recommendations I made. I also think I had a call today from someone in favor who made a really good point that this is important, training and for young people, this is an important aspect. Learning how to handle guns safely and do all that is really a positive, positive for young people, which I hadn't really thought of it that way. I mean, I was a Boy Scout and I did some of it then, but you don't think about it when you're a kid, but looking back, I think it is an important aspect. So, I'm not against it, but I think I'm trying to find a way to align these interests so the people who, so this can move forward.
Further board comments? Jason?
Yeah. Madam Chair, I think we need to find a way to take it back to town meeting, right? A lot of time has passed to create some time and space to talk to the advocates of the shooting range, the hunting association, everybody who's backed it, those, like I said before, noise, environmental, and then take it to town meeting with something a little more concrete than we have now, or even just educating everyone, and then see what everybody says. I feel like that's what we owe to, the vote of 2004, is to see what a shooting park looks like there. If town meeting says no for whatever reason, with whatever we all propose, select board, Mr. Holgate, everyone, then we could go to what else could happen there. But I think until then, we could speculate on a lot of different things. So I guess my question to John is a 2-year lease any different than a 5-year lease to get us to town meeting for next year? Does it matter one way or the other, RFP wise?
So the threshold for issuing the RFP is if the fair market value of the lease over the term of the lease exceeds $35,000. If it's less than $35,000, so let's say, just for argument's sake, I don't know what the value of that land is, the fair market value of that land. But if you granted a 1-year lease extension and it was determined by the town that that was less than $35,000, that would get you to town meeting next year, where you could have the presentation and potentially authorize a long-term lease. But if it exceeds 35,000, then you have to issue an RFP. So I'm not sure that you need to, let's just assume for a moment that the value of the lease exceeds 35,000 even for a year. Then you might as well issue an RFP, and let's say it's for 2 years. That gets you to town meeting. You can extend the lease if town meeting says yes. But then the hunting association knows that they're only guaranteed a certain short-term period, which I would assume would inform the decision of what kind of investment they wanted to make in the property.
Thank you. And that's going to be longer than 5 years. So that's where we need to get to.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So I'll make a motion for just put something out there, 2-year lease, to issue an RFP for a 2-year lease.
Is there a second?
Second.
If I may clarify that, it would include an automatic extension for a long-term lease subject to town meeting approval next year.
Yes, I would add that to the motion.
Is that okay, Melissa?
Yes, agreed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor by roll call, Matt Fee,
Aye.
Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. That carries unanimously. Thank you all.
Thank you, board.
Thank you.
We'll be continuing this discussion. The only thing I did leave on the agenda was committee reports. Does anybody have anything quick before we adjourn?
No, I'll make a motion to adjourn if there are none.
Okay. Is there a second? All those in favor by roll call, Matt Fee,
Aye.
Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. I will see you all in the morning. Thank you very much.